Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. It is Talking Seahawks with the Hawks Nest. Haven't been on here in a few weeks now. We took a week to decompress after the end of a ultimately disappointing but yet still happy inducing season, I guess you could call it. And now we're back and we're going to try to figure out how to parlay the better than expected 2022 into a great 2023. I'm joined by Brandon, as I am every week on this channel. Brandon, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm getting to talk Seahawks shop with you, man. Always makes the night a little bit better.
Right. So tonight we are going to spend most of our time talking about one particular topic that is right now the hot topic to end all hot topics in Seahawks Nation. The most important thing going on with this team at the moment. It is probably the line in the sand that a lot of fans are drawing right now. Last offseason, we had a line in the sand. We had a big battle about a quarterback, and this year we're going to have another one. So I'm excited to dig into that. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about the news from the last week, if that sounds all right to you, Brandon.
Sounds great.
All right. So first of all, let's just start with the coaching news. There's been no concrete movement yet. But let's start with Desai, because that's the one that's kind of been heating up.
Mm-hmm.
If you take a look at it, basically what we have right now is they're playing musical chairs. The defensive coordinators around the league, they played musical chairs all week. You had Steve Wilkes land in San Fran. You had Evero land in Carolina. Brian Flores went to Minnesota. And bottom line is this. Sean Desai currently does not have a seat, and there's an open seat in Denver. So we don't know yet, but I am like 95% sure that Sean Desai is going to end up in Denver. So is that your sense as well?
I mean, it does feel like that. I think musical chairs, the way they put that was that's how this does feel. You know, it's your turn. Okay, now it's your next, your next, your next. Is Desai going to be the one that's left without a musical chair? Where who out there is the hot coaching commodity that would be the one that he hired above him at that point? Especially because we already know, like to your point on this, before Desai gets connected with Denver, Peyton was already wanting a Vic Fangio. If he could get Vic, I think he was first kind of trying to aspire to put a super coaching staff together with Fangio as the lead on the defensive side of it. So I think he wanted to do that as well. Naturally, this would lead you Desai being the best disciple of Fangio, probably left on the board. Again, to your musical chairs metaphor, that would definitely apply, I think, with that. So certainly is possible with that. And even if it is passed over, there still does remain the Cardinal job, which who knows what, I guess they're waiting until after the year after the draft, or
Yeah, I'm hearing Shane Steichen.
that's going to be their head coach.
I'm hearing they're going to go after him. I don't know why he'd want to go there. I'd rather stay in Philly as an OC, but I don't think that Arizona job is desirable at all. I think they're going to end up hiring a what was the name of the plumber dude in San Fran? Oh, Jim Tomsula.
That's
I
right.
think they're going to hire a Tomsula type.
I could see it. I could see it. I what they're going to really have to do on top of it, with maybe getting a lesser candidate, to your point, is also what you heard about Payton, because Sean Payton also talked pretty explicitly here in the last week about what got him to Denver and what didn't get him to Denver. And it wasn't Russell, and that was the pull for me to come here. And it's as little bit as, again, my instinct on that before he even said that a little bit was that Peyton came there because he's getting paid a boatload of money, and he was being given the assurance that he's not going to be married to Russell Wilson. Whoever takes the Cardinal job, Brendan, is going to have to be given the same kind of assurances if they want anybody of even decent quality. But beyond that, you're going to get a Jim Tomsula. If you just go and say, no, your job is to make do with what we give you. And if you don't like that, tough, but you need to make Kyler Murray work. We're giving you a head coaching job to do that. Well, you're going to get the bottom of the barrel at that point.
Yeah, that's just the way I see this going. I mean, honestly, even if they get somebody good, you've still got no Kyler until maybe November, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know Colt McCoy's a good backup, but that team is not going to be expected to do anything in 2023. And maybe they just decide, let's just take it on the chin, get that top pick, and move on in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, that would be if I was them, that's what I would do, is don't try to reclamate this thing. You didn't feel good about the Kyler deal already before you got the deal done. You certainly feel even worse about it in retrospect. So all signs point to you just trying to find your way out of it as quick as possible, which means also, like you said, getting your next quarterback and getting the road to that, and being maybe one of those teams that silently, subtly angling for Caleb Williams or May. And that it's not the worst approach for them. And they've definitely humped the quarterback position before multiple years over. So why not keep doing it?
Yeah. So assuming Desai does head to Denver, which I think is likely the outcome here, I don't know who else they would get. I guess Vic Fangio hasn't finalized his deal with the Dolphins yet. They could still get him, but I don't see that happening. I think it's, they have a handshake agreement right now, and I don't think he's going to break that. What happens to this defense? Because at that point, one of the big reasons why you switched to the Vic Fangio defense was because you had Sean Desai. So what do you think happens in that circumstance?
Well, it does bring to mind a soundbite that I talked to you about before. We were at training camp last year, and you got Al Woods, and I think you have Quentin Jefferson standing around Clint Hurd as the new defensive coordinator, and they're talking to him about Desai. And he's like, "Well, look, I know defensive line. He knows secondary. I'm not going to try to do something that I'm not an expert at, or act like I'm an expert in that way. That's why we bring him in. I know what I know. He knows what he knows. So you lose something. It's not just a matter of you take it on the chin and just keep on rolling. Maybe Carl Scott has enough in himself in his addition. I know he has some familiarity with it too, but really, I mean, doesn't it, Brendan, at the end of the day, the draw becomes on a lot of different areas and fronts on this, if that were to happen, to just go back to the 4-3 defense. That you look at the situation and you go, okay, who's the great disciple of Fangio out there you're going to be able to go out there and get? Understanding a lot of these disciples aren't working. I keep using the word, I know, but I don't have a better word for it, but they've not been working out particularly great running his defense. And now you're going to get the ninth best, the 10th best guy at doing it out there on the open market. It would seem like, well, rather than do that, the easier, quicker path is go back to the 4-3 defense, which backwards and forwards. Maybe commit to being a little bit more aggressive with it as far as the blitz game, but just play your stuff legitimately. Get your pass rushers up front, because that's been one of the things that's been ailing this defense for years when they were running the 4-3, was not having the guys up front who could make it work. Get the guys up front who could make it work then, and the defense can be fine. As we've seen too, Brendan, the last point on this, the last data point to me that jumped out to me is that last year, as you said, who were the best defenses out there? Was it 3-4 defenses, or was it 4-3 defenses last year? And it's, well, really the success this last year has come from 4-3 defenses. So if you're just kind of like, to me, looking for, okay, here's a sign to go this way, here's a sign to go that way, here's a sign to go that way, it seems like it's kind of stacking up to going back to that, as opposed to trying to run uphill in this 3-4 scheme that didn't work particularly great all out the gate. And last point, you don't exactly have the right personnel to fit it as it is at the moment.
Yeah, I can get behind all of that. I don't really care what they do as long as they do it well at the end of the day, right? I mean, we're fans. We don't really care how you get your good results. We just want you to get your good results, unless you're doing like Bounty Gate or something like that to get them. Then maybe I would have a problem with that. But yeah, at the end of the day, we just want something that works well.
Yeah, the thing this does too, changing to 4-3. I love Jalen Carter, Brendan. I love Jalen Carter so much better as a 3-tech than a 3-4 defensive end gap and a halfing. I absolutely love Kalijah Kancey. He would be my number 2 defensive tackle on the board in this draft, ahead of Brian Breezy, if we were still running a 4-3 defense. And he'd be a guy, to me, worthy of a top 15 pick. So if you got him at 20, which I don't think he's going to last to 20, but if you did, I would be like, fine at that point. So there's so many other doors this opens up to me, to us being able to improve that defense in other ways that doesn't have to require us now rooting through the haystack, looking for the needle of a 3-4 end that fits right into the scheme, along with the linebackers. Because we know that's the other thing, is we know Barton and Brooks will also play better at the middle linebacker position, and we don't have necessarily a straightforward path to getting our next replacement for them either, because it's a weak draft for middle linebackers.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the big things I've been trying to figure out, how we can work around this offseason, and there's no easy solution to it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So that's basically the Desai stuff. I expect him to go to Denver at this point, but it's not set in stone. They did interview him 2 days ago, and obviously he didn't do such a good job. They were like, we're going to hire you right now. So maybe he didn't do well. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure he was being asked some questions about why the defense struggled so much this year, right? Because as hot a commodity as he was with the defensive coordinator job with the Bears, now you have this past season where it's, what happened here? You were being brought in to help instill this, and you didn't install it. What is it that you failed at doing? What's the reasoning behind that? And Peyton, I'm sure, is going to ask some pretty, with him, he's one of those guys he's not lack for, being shy. So he's going to probably ask you those straightforward, blunt questions and want an answer that makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure that Desai doesn't have necessarily the greatest of answers to give him, because what's he going to say? Well, I just didn't have the personnel. Well,
Yeah, that's all you can say, I guess.
yeah, but it's not going to be an excuse, I think, that holds up for Peyton, because he's like, well, what happens when we don't have the perfect personnel all the time, Sean? What happens when it's not all right for us? What happens when we have guys injured? I need to be able to call upon you to find the advantages then for them in that. And that may be a point that, I mean, it's we're just kind of turning this over, but I mean, because like I think you said at the top, he's going to probably get the job, but I'm sure that gave Sean a little bit of hesitancy.
Right. The other bit of coaching news from this week would be Dave Canales, who got a second interview with the Ravens, but did not get hired. So maybe that second interview didn't go great. And now apparently the Ravens are interviewing Bobby Ingram, who is already on their staff, and they may end up promoting him.
How about Bobby?
However, Canales is now getting interviewed by the Bucks to replace Byron Leftwich. So one way or the other, it seems like there's still a decent chance he leaves, although I don't think it's nearly as certain as Desai. And I want to say that if you look at Canales' history as a Seahawks coach, he's probably been one of the best assistant coaches we've had in the Pete Carroll era.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Are we including his work with Russ and stuff on that?
The Russ stuff, and also look at the receiver position when he was the receiver coach, because he got tremendous results out of UDFAs like Doug Baldwin, Jermaine Kearse. Every time we tried to give him like a blue chip talent, it didn't work out because of injury, like Sidney Rice, Percy Harvin, Paul Richardson. The only blue chip guy we gave him that, was actually allowed to pan out was Golden Tate. Golden Tate didn't get hurt, and Golden Tate, when he came into the league, was super raw, basically didn't know what he was doing at the position of receiver. And he developed into a honest number one by the time he left. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you look at Canales' work as the wide receiver coach, it feels like a lot of the positive development that was on the offense came from him.
No, I definitely, for his receiver work, I'd give him that. I ding a little bit with the quarterback stuff aside from this year, because I think there was some times where there was a lack of development from the quarterback position, where it's just kind of, I'm not seeing holes being cleaned up or ironed over. Now, maybe that's just the player's responsibility, not Canales at that point, and he certainly helped to get a great season out of Geno. So that would be more proof to that pudding, so to speak. But the receiver work, yeah, undoubtedly he did a great job with the receivers and their development on that. Ricardo Lockett's another guy that he got functional with Baldwin as an undrafted free agent. Was never a great receiver, but he got him at least times when he went in there, he'd catch the ball, he'd run good routes. They didn't lean on him a lot, but yeah, it would be a hit. If you lose him, it definitely would be a loss, and especially losing to Desai. Now that's two little dings to the coaching staff you're going to have to find a way to fill.
And one thing I should point out is the year Canales became the QB coach was 2018. And in 2017, Russ's game was just kind of broken, I think. It just deteriorated dramatically to the point where he was just completely out of control. He was running backwards like 20 yards and taking sacks and stuff, just playing really undisciplined. And in 2018, he had, at that point, maybe his best season ever. So I do think you got to give him some credit for getting Wilson back on track in 2018.
I guess. I mean, Schottenheimer also came in at that time, right?
Right.
So, I mean, it could have just as been as well. It's hard to give Canales all that credit when it could have been just as much Schottenheimer's new, and influence over on to Wilson at that point. So it's hard to say, but yeah, I mean, I guess I give a slight to it. It's when it comes to Russell's performance and stuff that came to be this year. And again, this could be just the personal responsibility of the player not taking the onus to say, I've got to get this stuff fixed in my game. But when it's neck up stuff for me, when it comes to a quarterback and you're not developing that stuff, when it comes to a guy like Russ, even later in his career, and you're not kind of advancing things, and then I'm going, okay, well, how much is your impact there really at that point? And with Geno this year, as good a year as he did have, how much of it was a quarterback coach and how much was it Geno taking responsibility this past 10 years to really do the hard work to get himself into the position to be ready for this opportunity when he finally got it? I don't know. That's why I'm a little bit resistant to give credit fully on this stuff, is I just don't really know. And I do have some questions on that too, because I would have liked to have seen some of those things in Russell's game going a little bit further along, especially when you're talking about a 4 year period where he's kind of at the helm at that quarterback position to know, okay, I've been here all these years, right? He didn't walk in the door at 18 at that point, not knowing, having been the receivers coach. He knew with Russ what needed to be fixed and what needed to be handled. And it really kind of wasn't, even though Russ got better in certain respects. It wasn't like Russ just did his same old kind of stuff at the end of the day, and he just did it at a high level with the deep ball stuff, and still being a scrambler, just getting a little bit better decision making, perhaps.
Right. So still waiting for word on that. I don't know how the Buccaneers interview went, but it seems like that Ravens interview must have not gone great, right? They didn't hire him immediately.
Well, and then what are the Ravens doing? I mean, they don't have a deal done with Lamar Jackson at this point. Is it going to be Huntley that they're going with next, or isn't he a free agent, I think, or something? Maybe not.
He's a restricted free agent, so
Restricted
they
free
can keep
agent.
him if they want to, but he didn't play that well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they're looking at either whoever they're going to go with. If they let go of Lamar, they just roll with Huntley. And they made him a Pro Bowl or two, which I thought was hilarious.
That was great.
It was funny as hell. Then they're looking at trying to get him to try to replicate stuff that Russ could do with the offense as far as using the legs to get stuff deep. So that's what they were thinking with the hire, but they must have not been enough quite there for him to get it out. Who did they hire instead? I saw the name, but I forgot who it was.
The Ravens?
Yeah.
I don't think they've hired anyone yet. I think the clubhouse leader is Bobby Ingram, but I don't believe they've hired anyone yet.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting, though, that they didn't go with him because that certainly is what they were trying to do there is get a guy that knows how to use that off-script kind of quarterback and build around him a little bit, theoretically.
Apparently, they're $100 million apart on the extension with Lamar. And I don't think the Ravens are a team that's going to bend the knee. I think they're going to be like, no, we think you're worth this, and see you later if you don't agree.
Yeah, they're an organization that's too smartly run to be held over the barrel on any given negotiation. I can't remember the last one I saw with them in which I felt like that was the case. They will move off of players, they'll keep players, but they're not going to let you push them into a territory where they feel like they've got to, overpay on you. And he's looking at the Deshaun Watson deal, and look, rightfully so, is to think, look, I've earned the deal. I've waited an extra year or two, whatever. But at the end of the day, I'm the Ravens. I wouldn't be doing it either. I would say, look, trust our organization. We won a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco. We'll find a way here. We'll find an alternative path. And I think that they'd be smart. Get a first round pick for Lamar, save the money on the cap, go get one. We'll talk about in a sec with some of these other quarterback options, but I do too. I really do feel like Lamar does get moved at the end of the day this offseason to some QB hungry team that just talks themselves into it.
Right. There's always someone.
There's always someone, man. Just takes the one desperate party. That's all it takes.
Okay, we got some donos here. Kevin Mullen, thank you for the $9.99. Feelings are going to get hurt, but we should prepare for life without a $40 million a year quarterback for the second year in a row. Stick to script and build the trenches on both sides. Side note, love Kajila, can't see. A lot of people are Kalijah. Yeah, a lot of people love him, by the way. A lot of people starting to love him. I've definitely been feeling that one.
There's no defensive tackle in the draft that's like Kalijah Cansey, and there's maybe not been another defensive tackle who quite matches up to Aaron Donald's game as far as what he looks like on tape coming out in college. Look, Aaron Donald, he's not Aaron Donald. He's not going to be Aaron Donald 2.0. I'm not going to overstate it on that, but it's one of those things, Brendan, where you can see like it's not a slight echo of another player's game. It's strong echoes of a former player's game. And he's that first step quickness, especially with his size, really stands out. He's a smaller guy. He's not as powerful, but I feel like at the next level, he's going to be able to win with his quickness because it is so special and unique. But I love him. And yeah, I can't, we'll of course get deep into this. I can't do the 40 million a year. I don't think you can either. I can't approach 40 million a year. I think that that's a silly number to be talking about paying for 1 year performance from Geno Smith.
Yeah. To me, it kind of all depends on how you structure it, because I understand that not all $40 million a year deals are created equal, that there are things you can do to make it not nearly that severe. But in terms of what I think he's worth, I tend to agree that even though I think Geno may be worth very close to that amount of money, maybe we shouldn't be the team that does it. Maybe it just doesn't make any sense for us to be the team that goes that way.
Yeah, I mean, you're not likely to give him a 3-year deal. So you're not likely to give him a 4-year deal because of his age. You want to give him a 3-year deal, which means, okay, 40 million, 120. I'm giving you 60 million guaranteed. Or probably even more than that at that point, probably like 70 million guaranteed. It's like, well, okay, after 2 years, I can technically get out from it, but now I've got this tremendous amount of dead money. That's the one thing about like, okay, well, we don't have to pay attention to the average per year rate because, they will get out after a couple of years. Well, yeah, but then you're getting out of it with a huge chunk of dead money going to a player that's not on the roster anymore. I mean, that's the other part of that comes to the side of that. I would be very disappointed in the Seahawks if they signed Geno Smith to a $40 million deal. Quarterbacks getting paid high amounts of money in this league right now, aside from the specials of the specials, are not going to get you there like that. And you're going to hamstring yourself in order to build this roster in other ways. I love Geno to death. I want the extension. You're right. There'll be a team that's probably willing to pay for it here, Brendan. But I just because another team's willing to jump off the bridge doesn't mean that I'm going to do it.
Right. Be calm, see clearly. Thank you for the $2. When will we truly compete? Be realistic. Well, couple different ways to answer that.
I'll let you lead with that one as I think about it for a second.
Yeah, I mean, look, if we do the right things this offseason, we can compete the same way we competed in 2012. I mean, maybe you're not talking about a Super Bowl, but you're talking about a productive run in the playoffs where you're clearly headed the right way as an organization. I think we can do that.
Yeah, I think you can get to this next year. It's to me a big calm as if you hit every move out of the park. You know, if you're going down the line and you're the free agency, you kill it. The draft, you replicate what you did last year. Maybe even find an undrafted rookie free agent somehow. You know, you're able to make maybe an aggressive trade to really go for it and inject yourself a little bit more forward to give yourself a little bit more. Then you can be into it next year. You're not going to be a Super Bowl contender by anybody's list of things, but you certainly are going to be one of those teams that people will look at and go, look, they're a team that can come that's on the rise, and they're going to get better sooner or later here. They may get there early. I think Brendan's 2012 example is a good one where, you know, that's a team that really wasn't ready to go to the Super Bowl. They got hot at the end of the year, so they almost got themselves with the ball rolling fast enough to just sort of force their way there just by the strength of their momentum that they had created that season. So that's really what you would need next year, but probably realistically 2024 is a year you could look at and say we should be a Super Bowl if not contending team. We should be one of those teams talked about in that at that point as at that spot. If not, that this rebuild's going wrong at that point if you're not there at that spot.
Right. I agree. If we're talking about Super Bowls, then I think we got to set it out to 2024. But you know, there's definitely a scenario where you bring back Geno and then you sign some veterans and you stretch the cap out a little bit, and you could say this is the year where we go for it. I don't think it's that far away. You're going to have to make the right decisions, but you can.
Now, we've learned if a team wants to go all in and truly do a little bit of sacrificing for the future, there's almost no limit to the lengths that you can go in a given year to really push for it. It just takes the cojones to do it. I mean, that's the bottom line. So it all depends on how much of a sense of urgency there is in this organization and how fast this thing will go.
All right. So a little bit more news came out tonight. This stuff is more, you know, for fun. This stuff isn't anything overly serious, but we did have the NFL honors ceremony where they hand out awards. The Seahawks had a significant presence on the ballot this year, so I think it's worth spending a minute on this one. So Offensive Rookie of the Year, Ken Walker, got the most first place votes, but did not win the award because they do a point system now. Garrett Wilson came in first. Yeah, Garrett Wilson. And Ken Walker came in second, and Brock Purdy came in third. So that's the way the ballot ended up going. So this doesn't happen very often. I remember this actually happened to Charles Barkley one year. He got the most first place votes for MVP, but because of the point system, Magic Johnson was given the actual award. And Barkley is still not happy about it to this day.
So understandable.
Yeah. So we'll see if that puts a similar chip on Ken Walker's shoulder going forward, but we don't have the Offensive Rookie of the Year, as it turns out.
Yeah, it feels like grading on a curve, doesn't it? Their little point system. It's a little bit like that to me, almost. It's like,
yeah,
feels in the same territory of it. But yeah, and the other thing is with this is recent historical marks. You know, where Walker ran for over 1,000 yards with 9 touchdowns. His yard per average carry 4.6. You know, historically speaking, when you've done that as a running back in the rookie year, you tended to win this award. So, but it's no shocker. We got both New York players winning it. You know, who could have seen that one coming?
Yeah, and to your point, Sauce Gardner won 46 of 50 first place votes for Defensive Rookie of the Year. I said this before, I'll say it again. I would have been fine if Hutchinson won Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think that he probably was better than Woolen, but I don't really get the Sauce thing. I just got to be honest. I don't.
You know what my new nickname is for him?
What?
Hansy Ramsey.
Mm-hmm.
That's my new nickname for him. And yeah, I don't get it with him either. I've missed the boat on that kid for all year. I've seen the cut ups on Twitter. Look at him locking a guy down, and he's out there mauling a guy and pulling and ripping his jersey. And it's like not making a play on the ball at pretty much almost ever. And then turns around and does this move like he did something special after the play. I've seen so many of those cuts of the guy. He has become quickly the most overrated player in the NFL. In just a rookie year, he's ascended that fast. It's kind of shocking to me of how much pub that kid gets. But I guess that's the upside of being a player in New York. Your star is going to shine bright.
Yeah, still wasn't enough to get them to the playoffs, though. So
yeah, just couldn't quite get there. Tariq got there, though, right? Didn't he help
he did.
Oh, he did. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he did. So Tariq Woolen got 1 first place vote. Aiden Hutchinson got 3, and Sauce got 46. So we also did not have the defensive rookie of the year. However, it looks like we did indeed have the comeback player of the year.
Let's go,
Geno Smith won.
Let's go, yep. Geno Smith.
Yeah, a little bit of a landslide there, by the way.
As it should be.
Yeah. Christian McCaffrey was a distant second. I believe Saquon was a distant third, and then the ballot got kind of messy after that, where you had a lot of guys get like a couple votes, like Nick Gates, because what happened to him? His whole leg like shattered, and then he came back.
I don't know.
It was something really bad, and then it was a miracle that he was able to play football again. Somebody voted for Jerick McKinnon. Somebody voted for David Ojabo, which is, imagine a rookie winning comeback player of the year. How does that make any sense?
He was out like half the year. Did he have that much of an impact? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, good for Geno Smith, man. Good for him.
Yeah, that's awesome for him, and it's well deserved. The guy came up and had a season no one saw coming, and he was very much the reason we went to the playoffs this year is Geno Smith and what he did. Decision making, arm, his legs, leadership. I think you could go down the line, and even though I'm saying I don't want to pay him $40 million a year, I wouldn't undersell the fact that his impact here this year was really big, and a big part of why we were able to have the success we have this year. I think hopefully into the future we're not going to need to require as much out of our quarterback position, which is why I'm not as heavy on we got to go up to 40 million. It's like give him a blank check. No. But what he did was astounding. And for a guy to have that many years that he's just sort of been sitting there waiting for his second opportunity to go out there and get it. Like I said, these are the kind of stories that you love to see in football. It's part of what you love about this sport, to see that kind of redemption tale come up where, it's not his fault necessarily. He got thrown to the scrap heap. That's just the nature of this beast. It spits these quarterbacks out fast if you don't show right out from the jump. And that wasn't his fault necessarily. And he did the most with that second opportunity, and he's going to make himself a very, very, very rich man because of it.
Yeah, I agree. That wasn't the end of it, by the way. Tyler Lockett won Walter Payton Man of the Year award.
Let's go, Tyler. All right. Another well-earned reward. All right.
Yeah, which is a very interesting time for him to be winning that. I'll say that, if you know what I mean.
No, what do you mean?
Well, apparently the study that apparently some watchdog group did a study of every charity run by a person who won Walter Payton.
Yes.
And that's where the Wilson report has come from. Yeah.
That's
interesting timing.
That is interesting timing. But hey, how about us having a couple of Walter Payton Man of the Year awards in recent years coming out of Seattle? And Tyler's done his I've seen a bunch of work he's done in the background as far as community wise. So fantastic. That's great to hear. Now he gets the patch too. I love that they let him wear the patch now forever. After you win it, you always get the Walter Payton patch on your jersey every time, which is just, I think, really cool.
And apparently we also won Fan of the Year, Larry. I don't know very much about him, but he's been awarded at the NFL honors with NFL Fan of the Year by Joel McHale.
Just Larry?
Yeah, I guess he's like, he's like Prince.
When you're that big of a fan, you don't need two names, or you get three names. It's either one name or three names. Definitely not two names. That's for the common man.
Correct. So that's some pretty cool stuff. That's not a bad haul, even though I think we all wish it was a little bit more.
Yeah, no, that's it's great. And I mean, you could see it coming with the New York kids rolling like they were. That's going to be enough to get it. I mean, being that many votes off, that should be a lot more of at least an even vote between Tariq and Ahmad. But, it's those guys had the year that they did. We know their impact. We know their effect. We know that we just had, I think, probably one of the best drafts that we've had in the franchise history, if not the best. and it's on the backs of these guys' performance in addition of what other guys did. And you don't get these kind of draft classes, Brendan. You don't get this kind of impact. You don't have 2 rookie tackles starting, but what we're going to get as far as the second-year returns, because let's remember something that Coach Carroll has often referenced and many coaches have referenced often is the player makes his biggest leap from year 1 to year 2. That's when you're going to that next step. That's when you're really going forward. You might improve a little further along beyond those next few years, but that's where you should see that big jump. And we got a lot of guys who already played really well. If they take that next step forward, look out. Somebody asked about competing. Now you're competing all that much faster if they do take those kind of leaps.
Okay, so that was a good half hour spinning around various Seahawks news topics. So I think it's time we turn the conversation to the biggest Seahawks subplot of the offseason. And the first domino that needs to fall.
I was giving you music there.
Yeah. All right. So it's Geno Smith. It's all Geno Smith all the time. So real quick, just to catch people up, so they're going to be on the same page here. We got 2 bits of news in the last week. Number 1, Geno was rumored, and this is a rumor. I think it came from the radio guy, Hugh Millen. Hugh Millen. Geno Smith was offered 3 years, $90 million, and turned it down, is the rumor. Number 2, Ian Rappaport, or I think it was Rappaport, tweeted out, and this is just his own personal opinion. He said, I suspect the Geno extension is going to land somewhere around $32 million a year. So basically he's saying he thinks they're close, but they need to push up a little bit more to get there. And they have all the time in the world, so there's no reason not to push it. Mm-hmm. And Geno at the Pro Bowl said, I think it's going to happen. I'm excited. I'm really confident I'm going to stay in Seattle. He sounded earnest when he said it. So that's basically all the concrete stuff we have right now. And some of it is, wet concrete. It's not solid, but that's the information we have right now. So my first question to you, knowing those things, where do you stand right now on the sliding scale of I want to keep Geno to I don't want to keep Geno, or somewhere in the middle? Like, where are you right now?
If we're talking about this deal ending up at $32 million per year, then you can mark me solidly, firmly in the camp of hell to the no. $27 million a year is the top mark that I want to go for. The whole point of this was to find a middle tier deal. The whole point of this was to find a blue collar contract, not to settle up on a contract that's going to put him up in the upper regions based off of 1 year of play. That's, to me, not part of the blueprint. That's not part of the plan that we put in place. That feels very reactive to his past year and not something that's been a forward-thinking process. That feels more like, oh, well, we have a news, so we got to do that now. It's, again, part of this whole step that drives me crazy about organizations, which is constantly they get into this position of feeling like we have to do it. We just have to do it. We have to do it. And this feels like that to me in a lot of ways. If you're going to 32 million, that's a big difference to me in 5 million. I don't like going to 27. That was my top mark. I wanted 25. So when you're talking about 32, now you're talking about $7 million more a year than I'd like to be at. And so I'm very much would be dismayed by them making that kind of signing that would use up, even if you were trying to talk to me about how they could structure this and structure that, you're using up most of your cap space that you have to work with this offseason now with that deal to a very large degree. Even if you lower down that first year hit, it's going to be probably a 3-year deal. John Snyder said he's not going to do voidable years anymore. He doesn't want to do that if he can avoid it. So now you have a 3-year deal, $32 million per year. You're giving him the guaranteed money. What are you going to pull that first year down to? 20 million, 21 off the 31 million it's at as far as it doesn't make any sense in building the rest of this team up. You have too many other needs right now to be spending for a go for it type deal on a quarterback right now. No.
Would your mind be changed if Schneider was amenable to doing void years?
The only way that I want to do a void year on this deal is if they're going to go for it. And if you're not going to go for it, what the hell are we doing here then? That's my thing. So if you want to do the void year and go, okay, let's go Geno, then go get Daron Payne, then go flip future draft capital, then sacrifice your GD 2-year, 3-year plan that you like to throw in our face at every turn. Go that direction with it then. If that's what you want to do. Don't piecemeal this. Don't half-ass this. Don't half-measure this. And that's my worry about this, Brendan, is you make the signing there, but then you keep your 2-year plan. But then you don't spend all the money. But then you kind of stay in the pocket of hedging your bets. So if this goes wrong, maybe we can kind of slide over there. That's not how you win in the NFL. If you want to win, you got to go for it. And if you're not that stable to go for it, then you need to keep building and building. It's like I've said to you many times before, you got 4 places a team is at: rebuilding, ascending, or they get stuck in between, or they're elite. This kind of move, signing Geno Smith right now and then not making any sort of commiserate signings in free agency that are really go for it type moves to really beef this thing up, would be just the type of move an in-between team types to make. And what do I hate about that, Brendan? I hate it because it doesn't get you elite, and it gets you stuck there for years to come because you make those kind of signings and deals. And that would be my big concern with this kind of signing.
Yeah, I was thinking something like, what if you did 3 void years, each 5 million? Because by the time you get to those years, 5 million is going to be like less than 2% of the cap. So I'm thinking about something like that to take the stress off. So 32 million a year actually becomes more like 27 million a year, which is what you were talking about. And then you can backload from there and probably get that first year cap hit down to like 10 million.
I guess I'm somewhat amendable to that. But I'm definitely feeling like here again that they're paying the popper for the top of the price, the top of performance. You know, you're paying for the max prices on this sort of market at that point. I understand there might be a team willing to give them 35, 40, but that again doesn't affect our decision making on this. It's about, is it a smart deal for us? It doesn't matter what another team does. Is it right for us, for where we have this team at right now? And we have a defense right now that needs to be completely redone up to the nines. You're missing 2 offensive linemen. You need a backup running back. You need another receiver to come in here at some point soon. Like you can't put all the resources into the quarterback position at this point and then go, okay, well, we'll just have to make do in the draft. We'll have to kill every draft pick and hope they can all. That's not a pathway to us getting elite really fast to me. That's, again, a little bit of a pathway to me, Brendan, of what they'll do is they'll make that signing. You'll get your little 5 million voidable years, and then they won't make any moves in free agency, or they'll do what they've done the last 3 times when they've had money to spend in free agency. They'll try to like get strength in numbers and put a whole bunch of like $3 million a year deals out on the table on tier 3 type free agents. And again, are you getting the team to an elite spot by taking that approach? No. And this is what worries me, is that we've been down this road before, paying the quarterback. And then what it does when you pay the quarterback, what happens to John Schneider and what happens to his decision-making as far as how he now spends his money, it becomes impacted by that highly. And this is what worries about me about this, is that he's going to be back in that same boat that he just got off. We just got out of the boat. We just ate $26 million off dead money last year getting out of this damn boat. We're going to get back into it now. And I don't, it's, yeah, the 32 thing just, that sticks a little bit for me, as far as that's just, to me, way too high. I don't care if the market's for it. I love Geno to death. I do, man. But I'm not in favor of paying quarterbacks big money, Brendan. How many times every year, so I'm giving you a long response to this, I'm sorry, but you got my blood up with this one, man. How many times every year do we go in the playoffs? And they'll run a graph in the playoffs, folks, right? You get into the wild card round and they run the graph. And they show the graph and they go, here are the top 7 paid quarterbacks in the whole sport. Every year they run this thing. Top 7, top 7, top 7. None of them made the playoffs, or one of them made the playoffs. And it's like every year you go through and you see it and you're like, man, that list every single year is pretty succinct. It's pretty similar. It's a rule of thumb. And again, as I always say, I'm not going to operate to the anomaly. I'm going to go more to what's the rule of the thumb, which is if I start paying quarterbacks big money, I'm going to hinder the rest of my roster building. And I think it would lead us into a place of being closer and closer to getting back in between rather than getting to elite.
Well, if the report is true that Geno already turned down the 3 years, 90 million, hard for me to believe that he would come down from that and accept a deal that's less. So basically what you're saying is your preferred path right now would be to tag and trade.
It would be. Every negotiation, you don't ever want to be in a negotiation where you say, we have to sign him no matter what. That should never be a place any organization finds itself in. There should always be a price you go. And John said that last week, there's a price we're willing to go on it. And I think that, that's the smarter pathway to go at that point, is to understand, again, Geno had some of his success, a lot of his success this year because of the hard work and the 10 years of working on his craft and all that. Yes, that's a part of it. But that's not the whole slice of pie here. A big slice of this pie in Geno's success this year is the talent that he had to work with on the offensive side of the ball. Another quarterback can come in, especially with that talent improving and getting better and more talented next year. They can get something out of that group as well. You can take a quarterback and elevate it up. And this is where my philosophy bases out of this, Brendan, which is just that it's becoming more about now, if I can build the offense up, I don't need the quarterback to have to do as much. I can get by and get elite. We got Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl. The guy struggles to throw past 5 yards of throw with the exception of the occasional 9 route that he'll toss down the field. But he ain't throwing post routes on a line. You're hearing it from a lot of the quarterback gurus this week talking about him. Like, he's running a read option offense. It's a little kitschy, and they're getting the most out of him. But you can get to the Super Bowl. You can go and win if you build up the offense around the player. So that's a part of that slice. And ain't all Geno just 100%, which is, he's got the S on his chest. No. You had 2 tackles blocking really well for you. Damian Lewis hit a 71 season for you. You had good running back play between Walker and Penny throughout the course of the year. You had 2 of your receivers out playing every single game that were basically Pro Bowl level receivers minimum, and 3 tight ends that could all catch and all do some work out there as far as creating separation and moving the chains. Another quarterback's going to benefit from that.
All right. So personally, for my part, I'm very ambivalent on it. I think both paths are... I would be okay with either. If you want to pay Geno $32 million a year, it's like, okay. And if you want to tag and trade him, I'm like, okay. I feel like both paths are pretty decent and both paths can work. I'm not married to either. I'm not in love with either. I'm just very in the middle right now. I can see I can see the argument that he's good enough to win with. I do think that he is, but I can also see, like, man, it would be really exciting to get one of these top rookies in here for a third of the cost and get equivalent, maybe better play by year 2, year 3. So I'm in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, don't you think a little bit with this, so let's walk this through a little bit. And just an example, Drew Lock comes in and he signs a 1-year, $5 million deal or whatever. And I think really, if Geno we're talking about, Brendan, I really don't think you're going to see the $5 million on the end of the deal thing with the void years. I think John's going to be stuck with this being a $20 million cost on the first year cap hit. So I save somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe $15 million. If I do the Geno deal on top of, let's say, the second round pick I get in return for Geno, if I franchise and trade him. So I have a second round pick coming back and $15 million. Is Geno's impact so much that it's worthwhile to do that? And it's a multi-year deal. It ain't just a 1-year deal cost. It's a multi-year deal with him now that I'm married to him. To me, and if I break that logic down in that way, I go, no, I'll go with Locke. Locke can give me 88%, and he's 1/4 the cost. That to me is better team building with the second or third round pick I pick back up for Geno on the other side of it. To me, that seems like the smarter roster build. To me, the smarter play.
Yeah, I just don't have full confidence that Drew Lock is going to be that much of Geno Smith. I mean, there are some things about him that I like, but here's my thing. I don't want... If you take Pete Carroll at his word in that postseason press conference where he sounded like a guy who was ready to just go for it this offseason, I don't want to go for it and then have Drew Lock be my quarterback. I don't want to go for it and have some unknown commodity like, even a top-end rookie. It's still a rookie, right? You're not expecting to win the Super Bowl with a rookie. It's, never happened before for a reason, I think. So if I'm really going to go for it this year, the options to me are really limited. Now, you could just decide, okay, we're not going to go for it this year. We're going to go for it next year. And then I'm much more amenable to like Drew Lock or Will Levis or I think it's Levis, actually. People keep telling me in my comments it's Levis. I should learn how to pronounce him if I like him so
I've probably
much.
been calling Levis too. So it's, what are you going to do?
Yeah, then that path makes sense to me. But if you're going to go for it, I think you either have to bring back Geno or there's one other guy that I would be kind of open to in free agency that you could get. It's a lot of people dunk on me for this one. They think I'm being ridiculous here, but Taylor Heineke. Okay. I anybody else is like too expensive, doesn't fit the system, would cost too much draft capital because he's going to get tagged, or I just can't trust them. So to me, the options are really thin if you're trying to go for it all in 2023. That's my hang up.
Yeah, I guess I look at the go for it in 2023 and I go, what does that mean? And does go for it, not to rehash what I just kind of said before, but just does it go for it, mean you sign Geno and then you're just going to do what you've done prior in your approach as far as draft capital and money? And they've traded draft capital before, so maybe that'd be their go for it as we sign Geno and then we'll trade a future first for a player that's, distinguished or whatever. And I guess we'll see how that plays out. I almost have to see what that is tangibly, because I remain a little bit skeptical, Brendan, that they would ever really right now, a year out from potentially selling the team, go for it. I don't think they're going to want to have necessarily an owner into the future that, is like, here, you're buying the new thing. We're down a first round pick. The cap's, juice to the nines. Good luck to you now. Maybe there's an owner, maybe it wouldn't impact it at all. But I guess I'm not as sure as that they're going to necessarily take that approach. And you're right, there isn't a lot of other options out there as far as I wouldn't want to do Garoppolo, wouldn't want to do Baker Mayfield. Heineke could be maybe workable in there. I do feel like it is one of those things too, where I think you also are looking at try picking the quarterback in the draft at that point. And if it's Anthony Richardson or whatever it may be at that point, or maybe you just go the second or third round point, Hendon Hooker or something like that, and you bring in the veteran. And then, but Brendan, I don't see how they look at the team and go, okay, we're going to go for it this next year. I would be flabbergasted, Brendan, if they truly went for it in the way that you're kind of talking about, like the aggressiveness you're talking about, what Carroll's tenor and all of that. I would be very shocked based on what I've seen from this team over the last 4 or 5 years with Paul Allen gone and how much they've kind of just treaded water at times in their approach through an offseason where they will make trades. They will swing, right? But they're not swinging from a point of go for it, Brendan, right? The Jadeveon Clowney move wasn't a go for it move. The Jamal Adams wasn't a go for it move. Those were moves that were reactionary to the fact that you weren't taking care of business in the offseason in a particular positional group. And so that's way different than what we've seen from some of these other teams where it's like, oh man, they're giving up that for that to do this now. They're doing this too. That's different. That's different to me than what we're, and so I hope you're right that that's what this would be. And not look, if they do that, I'll be completely happy with the Geno deal. If you want to go 32 and you bust out a bunch of void years at the back end of the year so you can put more of the contracts on the front end right now, and you're like, we're going for it. Let's go. Sign me up. I'm on board. Yeah. If it's that, let's do it. And I won't piss and moan 1 inch about this Geno deal. But if you're signing the Geno deal and then you're going to bitch and moan to me about the fact that you're hamstrung on your cap like you did in the past with Russell's deal, because they made a bones out. It's kind of hard. You're paying the quarterback, no. Okay, well, which is it? You got to make a decision on what you want to do here.
Oh yeah, that's going to get on my nerves like nothing else. If they pay the quarterback and then cry about paying the quarterback, it's like, if that's how you feel, don't pay the quarterback ever.
Right. People would support them right now making that choice, Brendan. I know there's a big contingent of Seahawks fans that are in favor of signing Geno, but there's not going to be a revolt of the front office or coaching staff if they went, you know what? It's okay. You guys didn't do this. You have a plan. If you're trying to replicate the 2012 blueprint, you don't sign Geno to $30 million a year. That's not what the blueprint was. And as I've said for a while on this, Brendan, to me, it's kind of crazy if I'm John Schneider and Carroll at this point, that I don't look at this and go, look, within the last 10 years of how we've run our organization, we got to back-to-back Super Bowls. Not 20 years ago, not 30 years ago, within the last decade, back-to-back Super Bowls, and we won it. We beat the all-time best offense with having this approach. So why don't we try to replicate that down to the button as far as we can? Why wouldn't you? That's to me the thing that I can't understand. If they're going to leave this outside of this blueprint and go outside the plan, I would think you'd go into that plan as hard as you could, because you might have not just caught lightning in a bottle. You might have why I call it a blueprint, Brendan. It's a blueprint because I can rebuild the building. I've got the plans. They're right there. I put this part there and I put that part there and I put that part there. That's why I think they should stick to it. So I'm really more in favor of that at the end of the day when we get that price going. Boy, there's 32 just that pill sticks right here in my gullet, man. Right here in the gullet.
Kevin Mullen, thank you for the $1.99. Void years equals Bobby Bonilla and Mets.
Bonilla.
Well, this is actually an interesting example, and I think it actually illustrates something that I want to talk about. The guy who owns the Mets right now, what's his name? It's not Wilpon anymore. It's the guy who just bought them. I can't remember his name, but he is one of the richest owners in baseball. And even with the Bonilla contract, which I think runs for like another 10 years, the Mets have one of the biggest payrolls in the league. They spend money like crazy. Yeah. Do they care about the Bobby Bonilla contract? No, it's a meme. It's like something that we all laugh at because it's funny. It's not something that is holding that team back. Likewise, if you used void years in a potential Geno Smith deal, like I threw out the idea of doing $5 million void years for 3 years after the deal is up. That $5 million is going to be something like less, like 1.7% of the cap by the time you get there. Like, do you really think that's going to restrict you from being able to build a team? Do you think that's really going to be something you're agonizing over? Probably not. Yes, it exists. Yes, it's something that you have to work with. But at the same time, if every other team in the league is willing to do this, you need to be willing to do it too, or you're going to be left behind. So I actually think the Bobby Bonilla contract is an example of what I'm talking about, where it's not that big of a deal. It's more amusing anecdote as long as you do things the right way.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to compare baseball, and especially the time when baseball is making that contract to Bonilla and football. Football's got a hard salary cap. When the Mets made that deal with Bobby Bonilla, that was not at a time where it was a wild west and any team could spend what they wanted, where they wanted, and how they wanted. And it simply is costing the owner's pocketbook as much as anything as far as tangibly affecting the team and how you build the team moving into that future point. It's a little more stickier, I think, in football with the fact you have the hard salary cap. You're right. I wouldn't be hesitant at all to do the $5 million scenario you talked about. Can you get that then deal down to a $10 million first hit? Maybe. Maybe it might require a little more void in the back end on that to make that happen. But again, I'm on board with doing that, Brendan. But I think that if you're going to do that and you're going to be that team that says, okay, like we talked about, know where you are in that rung. I know I go back to this a lot of times, man, but I tell you, I'm onto something with this. If you're deciding you're in the late stage of things, one of the reasons I have this whole, there are 4 stages of a team that they find themselves in, is so you recognize what stage you're in and then you operate appropriately. So if you're going to decide as an organization, we're in the elite stage of things, then Brendan, that means the chips all get pushed to the middle then at that point. Because like you said, the teams are doing this throughout the league. And absent having a Patrick Mahomes type or a Tom Brady type, you're going to have to be one of those teams pushing all of the chips to the center of the stack to hope to get to a Super Bowl, to hope to be in competition in this kind of way. And so, yes, I think you can do it. I hope they do it. Hope they don't just go halfway onto it. But that would be my worry about making that kind of deal, is that then they go, okay, well, we did our big swing and now we just got to, re-sign Damian Lewis. You know what I mean? After we re-sign Jason Myers and all the money's gone.
Yeah. I mean, what you can't do is what the Bucks did. They have, I think it's a $35 million void cap hit on Brady this year.
Yeah.
That you cannot do.
Yeah.
Because, like, what did it get you? It ultimately got you, like, one below average year from a quarterback and first round exit. You can't do that. But if it's $5 million a year for 3 years in 2026 and on, I don't think that matters at all.
No, it doesn't hold you back from doing it. And it's a smart approach where it's you aren't killing your cap, but you are going a little more aggressively than just saying, okay, well, we got to work in the parameters of the cap. And it's, again, no, you don't. This is the way the sea changed, the way the wind's blowing, is the teams are going to have to start getting a little more aggressive. The nature of the beast has changed. It's the ground's moving beneath us, and we need to be reactionary to that if we're going to decide to be elite, Brendan. And like we're talking about here, everybody in the fan base, I think, would be totally in favor of understanding if it were to take another year of kind of letting the flower grow out of the pot, letting it root, right? We'd completely understand. But if you're going to go and you're going to choose that lane, like, let's get on that on ramp and let's hit the freeway and let's go on the Autobahn, let's go. But that means the pedal goes down now. That doesn't mean you just like, well, we just want to go a little fast. Just want to go like, let's go up to like 90. No, get that thing. I want to see that needle going 135, 150. Let's go. This is where we're at. So they've got to choose to go that way,
Right. Oh, hot off the presses, breaking news, people. I have great news. Geno Smith got an MVP vote. MVP vote.
Oh, boy, Russell Wilson's, he's just having a rough go of it, man.
Yeah, well, in fairness, it was a 5th place vote. It was, like someone put him on their ballot for 5th place. But, yeah. I mean, Wilson's not on here either.
Did Wilson ever get a vote, though? Didn't he have he never got a first place vote, I guess.
Well, they didn't do it this way until this year. This is the first year they're doing the 5-place ballot. So Geno Smith, I guess he's the first quarterback in Seahawks history to get an MVP vote, right? Because there's no way Dave Craig ever got one, right?
I don't think so. Dave had some pretty good years, but no, I don't. Not with Warren Moon and a couple of their cats, So yeah, he's gotten more MVP love than Russell Wilson ever got at this point officially.
I think it's our first MVP vote since Tony Dungy voted for Bobby Wagner in 2014, which was
right.
Hopefully he lost his ballot after that one. I'm just gonna
he had a good year that year, though, man. I mean,
he missed 5 games. That was the year he missed 5 games. It was yeah, it was. It was the year we lost in the Super Bowl. And that year I remember very clearly because Bobby got injured against the Cowboys, and then we couldn't stop DeMarco Murray the whole game because of it. And then we couldn't stop the run for the next 5 games. And then Bobby came back and suddenly we could stop the run again.
Shocker. Yeah.
But yeah. Oh, by the way, here, I just since we got plenty of time here, I want to look at the rest of this ballot. So Pat Mahomes won in the landslide, of course.
Yep.
Other vote getters included Justin Fields got a vote.
Okay.
Tyreek Hill got a vote. Derrick Henry got a vote. Denny Kellington got a vote. Who is Denny Kellington? I think somebody used one of their votes as a joke because I've never heard of this man in my life.
Yeah, you talking about somebody needing to lose their voting
Yeah.
voting rights at that point. That's like, yeah, we're going to take your ballot away now. Those are all right.
Yeah.
Tariq getting the votes right. I mean,
Yeah.
he was insane for Miami this year. Everything they had thought they were getting and more. So that would make sense. Fields is no, just because you had to carry your team because your team sucks doesn't mean you carried it well. He did fine as with what he could do, but he wasn't, lifting the team up and somehow, driving them through. Mahomes went out and performed this year, losing his best guy on the outside. And, he didn't miss a beat. You got to give it to him. I think,
Yeah. Nick Bosa came in 6th. He got, let's see here, 1 third place vote. So that was the highest defensive player. And the top 4 were quarterbacks. Justin Jefferson was the highest non-quarterback. So mostly agreeable other than whoever it was who voted for Denny Kellington.
Yeah. Denny Kellington. I've never heard that name in my life.
Yeah.
So, but no, those all make sense. Bosa had a legitimate great year. He should be wasn't he voted defensive player of the year too?
Yeah, he's defensive player of the year. Micah Parsons was 2nd.
Mm-hmm. So that's, that makes no sense. That's definitely Bosa earned it this year. He was outstanding. He's a great all around player. And, boy, and the Eagles, didn't they do a job to him as far as the unblocked stuff in that game, Brendan? That's one of the things that stood out to me watching that game was how they confused him on where things were going and without blocking him at times. And it was able to, sometimes give them at least keep him a step slow in his pass rush game against him in that playoff game.
Yeah, and they did the same thing with Parsons in the first Eagles-Cowboys game this year. So that's something they're good at.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's the day we've done it. Whenever we leave him unblocked, our guy gets killed. So never works for us.
Also, they announced the Hall of Fame class for the year, it looks like, during the honor ceremony. Former Seahawks greats Dwight Freeney and Devin Hester did not make it.
Hester will get in at some point. So
he has to. It's weird that he's not.
It is weird that he's not. Sad to see too that they don't still have yet a former Hawk that I think is one that doesn't get talked a lot about, that is not really kept in consideration as much. And I've spoken to you about it before, but Chad Brown, Chad Brown should really be still considered up in there in this talk of things. And it sucks that, he got he started out with the Steelers, Brendan, as this outside linebacker that was going to be every bit like your traditional Kevin Green type, Joey Porter type. He's going to go out there and get 120 sacks for his career and just rush off the edge. And then came to Seattle, signed the big deal, and we turned him back into more of a middle linebacker. We'd like a Micah Parsons thing, where it's a little bit more, but less pass rush than Parsons gets to do because it was more of a running age, of course. So went to do more dirty work now. And, he said the same thing when I asked him about it. So it sucks. He's kind of not even in the consideration point on that.
So apparently, by the way, Denny Kellington is the athletic trainer for the Bills who gave Denny Hamlin CPR.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah. Well, okay. At least they used his 5th place vote on it, not his 1st place.
We are in the age of, oh my God, gestures, empty. We're in the age of empty gestures, Brendan.
Yeah. No comment on that one. That's an interesting one. Okay, so we talked about the possibility of keeping Geno, which again, I would imagine it's going to be somewhere around 32 to 35 million, and you're not on board with that. I'm on the fence on it. It's hard for me to say it's bad. It's hard for me to say it's good. One thing I will say, though, if you look around the league right now, most of the big QB extensions worked out terribly. Most of them are going really badly right now. So that's definitely, and guys better than Geno at the time when they signed those contracts. Yeah. So maybe that's a vote in favor of not doing it.
Well, like I was just saying, there's so many data points on this, Brendan, that push you in this way. This is trending this way, right? We've got guys like Brock Purdy going out and showing you that, I mean, he didn't just go out there and throw for 100 yards a game when he went in there and started for San Francisco. He went to a stacked unit and he balled out. Now, he eventually got broken because he's a little small and undersized. I wouldn't shoot for a 6'1" quarterback that can't take a hit if he gets smacked. But, there's a lot of quarterbacks from Geno on down. You can go through the league that are playing really well without having to necessarily be this highly paid guy. And look at the Kyler Murray deal. Just 1 year for ahead from these deals being signed. We can go back from the 2-year deals. We'll find a lot of those guys too. And the Raiders like their situation right now where they've got to release Carr or trade him and get somebody to take his contract, or else they're not going to get a thing for him because of that deal that they just recently signed him for. Or Kyler Murray last year, they got forced into it. Now they can't get a coach in there. They can't get a coach in there. Or you've got the Deshaun Watson deal with all the guaranteed money. And what that do, they love that deal today and the first round picks they gave up for. Is you go through deal after deal after deal. And it's like the Tom Brady deal you just talked about. Did that one work out for them buying their extra year and get, they got the one Super Bowl out of it, but you're paying the price on the other end of it. And it's just the recent trend is that paying your quarterbacks is not the road to getting to a Super Bowl. It's the road to making you feel warm and comfy at night, gives you that nice big blanket and you're just real warm and toasty, but it doesn't necessarily bring you Lombardis. And what we should be trying to do and look at with this team right now is what is it that's going to be the pathway to getting us to potentially getting to a Lombardi? No guarantees of it, but that's what we're competing for. And Brendan, I know you mentioned the void years, but if you wake up tomorrow and it's 3 years, 32 million on average per year, and it's guaranteed money through the wazoo, where you can't necessarily just easy peasy get after the deal after 2 years. I mean, are you going to feel okay about that? Or is there not going to be, from your standpoint, some pushback on your channel and saying,
I mean, look, I understand the ways in which it can go wrong. I understand that there's definitely a clear possibility of it going wrong. That doesn't necessarily mean I wouldn't do it. I think that, life is a series of things where you do things knowing things could go wrong, but you do it anyway. I think that the way Geno played and looking at the QB market, he's worth that money. Again, just because all these other teams are doing it to themselves. I mean, I don't know if you've heard, but apparently the Giants are poised to offer Daniel Jones like 35 million a year, which I think is absurd. Like, I don't want to be that team, but at the same time, I don't want to be the one team sitting here with my arms folded, like, complaining about how expensive all these quarterbacks is. Meanwhile, every decent quarterback goes to another team because I'm the only one not willing to pay them. That's not necessarily a recipe to get ahead either.
do you think you're getting ahead though? If you sign that deal, let's say this stuff goes like this, you sign the Geno deal. Your cap's driven down. You don't have the voidable years on the deal. It's a 3-year deal. So it hits fairly tremendously hard on this cap space we have currently right now. The Seahawks then show a fairly decent amount of inactivity into free agency, looking more for those tier 3 type free agents that they have normally historically recently gone to. So fitting to historical regulars in past seasons, that's what goes down. And then you get into next season and you've had your draft picks, you've signed Geno, you've not done much as far as then in free agency. Are you going to still feel like we couldn't have sat there with our arms folded? We had to make that deal.
Oh, yeah. If it goes that way, I'm going to be very annoyed because then it becomes kind of clear that the objective was not go for a title. The objective was win enough games to sell out all your home games.
There you go. And being an in-between team, right? I mean, that's at that point, you're sort of setting yourself, unless you have some godforsaken like development from all of your rookies, that would be the team you're putting through.
Yeah. I will say this, though, with all the draft capital that we have, we don't necessarily need to throw around a ton of money in free agency. We just need to pick and choose a couple of appropriate deals. If it's Daron Payne, it's Daron Payne. If it's Connor McGovern, it's Connor McGovern, whatever. So it's not like we need to go out there like the Patriots 2 years ago and just throw money at everybody. But there would need to be a certain level of like, okay, we need this and we can't be willing to just back away as soon as the bidding gets a little warm.
Well, and that's where my issue comes with this, is that you're talking about wanting to get players to me, and tell me if I'm wrong on this with what I'm getting from you with this, is that, you need to get, you're right. I'm with you on it. It's not now you got to spend the money on everybody and try to do this. Like we're going to build this team through free agency, but you are targeting it on certain individuals that aren't guys that are just, some diamond in the rough, depressed value types, but guys that other teams in the league are going to value, and you're going to have to pay top of the market prices for them. And it gets very hard to pay top of the market prices for players if you're hindering your cap in other ways. And there's been times, Brendan, where we've had $50 million to spend in offseason. The Greg Olsen offseason, if you go back and look at those contracts you doled out, there must have been legitimately like $3 million a year, single year deals handed out that offseason. And you just ate your cap up through those deals. There was no multi-years. There's no massaging the numbers out. The bill came fully due, and it was on these tier 3 guys. And if you're just going to go target for tier 3 guys, it's not going to improve this team. Be it Daron Payne, Terrell Edmonds, Mitch Morris, any of those guys you want to do that are actually going to significantly help this team out and get it better, you're going to have to pay the price. But if you don't have the money to spend, then you just go and you just they'll do the move, or they'll pull their pockets inside out and they'll shrug, and go, well, we had to pay Geno. What we're going to. I'd much rather go make a couple of splash signings, go with the lock, and see if we can build the super team up. That's to me you talk about what's the holding your lawns. Like, I don't have a lot of hope for Drew Lock, but I mean, Brendan, Geno threw for 4,400 yards. Like, you don't think Drew Lock can throw for 3,700 yards and 25 touchdowns and 12 interceptions in a year? I mean, if you're asking him to stay, if you're running the ball consistently, if you're not asking him to throw to 60, 65% a game, I think he can. I do.
Probably. You're probably right.
And so, like, again, the significant difference in cost and just that's the pathway. And then you could go into free agency. You could get your Deron Payne and you could get your Terrell Edmonds or get a Mitch Morris and Deron Payne. You could double up in the way. And then you have your draft picks. Then what that does for you on the draft, how much that frees you up in the draft to really truly go BPA then, because you've already gotten now two of the bigger holes on your team, the bigger needs on your team. Just to me, it sets you up for so much more flexibility. I know it puts you a little bit as far as in a tough case with the quarterback position, but I just feel like it's kind of trending this way too.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that Geno excludes you from being aggressive in free agency. I think that is kind of an old-fashioned way of thinking. There are ways to do it. Now, maybe we're one of the teams that is not as amenable to doing it as other teams, but as a objective observer, I look at it and I go, you can re-sign Geno and then find ways to go make those splash signings still.
You're 100% right. They can do it. But you have a general manager who's indicated to you after he was asked specifically about that recent void year season, because let's remember the time that they used the void years recently to the tune of like $12 or $13 million to create cap space. They then left that cap space off the books that year for that season in a year where you were theoretically trying to go for a Super Bowl. So even when he used the void years in the past, he still kept the cap space open on the front end to augment it a little bit. And so he's told you he doesn't like to do it. When he's done it, he hasn't done it in the way you're talking about, which is truly giving yourself space to use now, not to do this pseudo thing that they did where I create the space, but then I don't use it, right? That's what they did with those void years. They created space for that cap that year, 12 to 13 million, but then they didn't use it so they could just roll it over next year. Why, Brendan? To sustain the void year deals that they had put into the contracts. Okay. That made no sense. That was
yeah. Well, we talked about this before, but I think what happened was they were planning to make a midseason trade and then there was no midseason trade to make.
Yeah. But it's even, and as I've said before, that to me still doesn't hold much water because, okay, you had anticipated a trade happening, but then a trade didn't happen. So you didn't know the market well enough in advance to know whether or not there would be a deal there on the table at that time. As opposed to getting it done in the offseason, you're counting at this trade deadline, which was, again, not showing forward thinking in that moment from our general manager because of the fact that there was a 17th game season. And if you did look ahead on that, you would have maybe been able to predict a little bit more thoroughly because there'd be more teams in it going for it. You'd have less teams then willing to offset guys, offload, and be in fire sale mode than you had in years past because of that, which is the way that that's played out. But you're right. That is what caused that to be drawn in that way. But as I said, we're on the same page with this, Brendan. If they go that route with it and they're willing to be aggressive like that and get into free agency with it at that point, that goes in tandem with the Geno move, then I'm with it. And 32 is not going to make me bristle as much. But if it's that you sign that deal and then you're going to be hamstrung, can't go as hard as we wanted to go. We had a plan, we're going to do it, but then we had to get the Geno deal for that as a higher priority. So we just had to kind of choose what was the higher priority. We had to pick between the kids and the defensive line kid loses out, the linebacker kid loses out, but the quarterback kid goes far.
Okay, let's see here. Alexander Wheeler, thank you for the $5. There's a chance John is down on the QBs in this draft, and that's why he prefers re-signing Geno for 3 years. Either that, or he likes the developmental QBs. I mean, it's definitely a factor that this QB class wasn't as good as some people were anticipating. I think that's an element here.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yeah. I think it really hurts that Hendon Hooker won't be able to play very much this year. I think if Hendon Hooker was healthy, that might change everything.
It could change a significant degree of it. And I think that sometimes some of this is also just what Brendan's talked about, though, with don't want to be the guy left with your arms folded, looking around the room going, where'd all the quarterbacks go? And I think that there is a little bit of a worry when it comes to general managers when they have a guy under their wings and there's already a guy in the room and they already know what they've got. And there's not any question mark with that guy. I think there's a little bit of a draw and a pull to stay with that guy at times, as opposed to, trusting yourself and trusting your system and trusting where your team is at. And that's what I worry about, because then that's not being informed by what's the smartest approach. That's almost being informed by you being fearful, right? What if we get left being the guy with the arms folded? What if we be left in the room with nobody around? Well, now you're making that decision to sign Geno because you're scared to death of that thing. Then that's not you being, forward thinking or being proactive. Again, now we're into the reactionary state. We're into that fearful state. And I just feel like organizations don't make their smartest decisions when they operate from that area of things.
Yeah, that's definitely fair, and I don't want to be that team, but I can also recognize. I mean, I don't know if you agree or not, but in the current quarterback market, a 30 million, $32 million a year deal would be like mid level. That is mid level now because you're seeing these contracts go north of 50, and I suspect we're going to see at least one QB contract this offseason that goes to like 55.
I guess when I look at a mid-level deal, I look at a quarterback deal that's not going to hamstring me on my cap in a way that is going to prevent me from being able to be as active as I'd like to be and making other signings. So let's take what would be the equivalent example of this. This would be like the Jimmy Garoppolo signing when the 49ers traded for him from the Patriots and what they gave him on an average per year versus what that was at the cap, which is, he was, I think, 27, but the cap was up there. The market was up at 40 at that time or something for the new deals being signed. So, okay, we get a $55 million deal this year and a 32. I still think, though, like Jimmy's deal to a degree hampered the Niners a bit because it wasn't a true just mid-tier deal where you're actually keeping the numbers pretty significantly low. You're getting the cost going through. The other part of this, too, is the fact that it's going to be probably a 3-year deal. So that means that you're not going to have that fourth year to necessarily stretch those numbers out, which makes the impact of it that much more significant to me versus, let's say, Mahomes' deal that he signed on the 10-year contract where he was able to lower down the first couple of years on that, still keeping him under that, well below that 15% spot that's the death knell for quarterbacks if they go above that mark and trying to go out and win Super Bowls.
Mhm. Yeah. As for John not liking the QBs in this draft, though, I don't know if I buy that. Maybe he doesn't like the development. Maybe he doesn't like the lower tier guys. But with what we know about John, I suspect that he would really like Stroud and Levis.
Say it right, Brendan. I agree with Brendan on this one, Alexander. I'm not totally sure that John feels that way either. I think he understands he's going to not get two of the quarterbacks. So two of the top guys are going to be gone by the time he's picking. And as me and Brendan have said multiple times here, there's no way in hell John Schneider is going to trade up in a draft where he's picking 5 overall already out the gate. That's just not going to happen. So, the thing that we understand about him, Alexander, let's go back. Let's go back to the Russell Wilson days. You had Tavares Jackson on the roster. You went out and spent money on Matt Flynn. You still then picked Russell Wilson in the 3rd round. I think if anything, what could potentially just as likely be doing here is, even if he signed Geno, look, we are owned up then to Geno for 2 years. If it's a 3-year deal, we're going to give ourselves, it may hurt, there may be some dead money, but there will be some kind of out for that 3rd year. Having a guy like Anthony Richardson, for instance, who's going to require 2 years of sitting, if he's in love with Anthony Richardson and he's like, look, I'm going to pair Geno and Anthony Richardson, and I'm going to give Anthony that 2 years with having Geno play. And then if he's not ready by year 3, I've still got Geno for a final year of his deal. But if he is ready to play, then I can move on from Geno at that point. That to me could be just as likely the case of what's going on too.
Let's see here. Kevin Mullen, thank you for the $4.99. I'd love for Hawks to leave the draft with these 4 players: Cansey, Drew Sanders, Keon White, and Mozzie Smith. Question: if Tannehill cut, is he a FA bridge? All right, so let's start with the first part of this, the draft part. Cansey is somebody I need to look at more, but what I've seen so far seems quite good. Mozzie Smith is nice. Keon White, I don't know, and Drew Sanders, I'm kind of on. All right, go ahead.
I'm trying to get warm up on Drew Sanders. I guess, Brendan, the tape that we're supposed to watch on Drew Sanders is the Alabama tape this year. So when Arkansas played Alabama, that's the one. And you got that one on, they've got that one on YouTube, Brendan, with just the defensive cuts with that. So it's just the Arkansas defense, Alabama, bam, so you can just watch it after that. Keon's interesting. He's a guy he's really rising up boards. He is, along with Will McDonald off the end of the Senior Bowl. Those two guys are really, really going up. Carl Brooks, another guy with those trio in there. Hard guy to assess because he's played a lot on the outside, probably a little bit too much on the outside in college. He's probably more of an inside guy, 3 technique type of guy. And that could be where his best, brightest future is in there, but you don't have it on tape to go off of. Still exciting from a physical standpoint, can give you some inside outside at least. So he also provides some positional versatility. And Mozzie Smith is, I call him the wall in the middle, man. He is the great wall. He's the guy that you put up there in the middle and no one is running in the middle of that defense at that point. So you walk out with that, Kevin, sign me up. I'm like with Brendan though. I'm struggling to come aboard with Drew Sanders. He's a tough sell for me. And that's the guy, 9.5 sacks last year. It's like, and I'm still like, I should be 9.5 sacks. That's tremendous for a linebacker and as a blitzer. Like, oh, get out of here. But And he's got the size, right? He's not like Ivan Pace, where Pace is a little tiny guy. He looks like, he's like 5'10". Sanders legit, 6'2", 6'2.5". I don't know why. Can't
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we got plenty of time to get there between now and April.
Yep. Still more time to view. Where are you at on Tannehill?
Yeah, he's definitely on the list for free agent bridges. Like the idea of a free agent bridge is it's a guy that you kind of know is like a low end starter, but he can hold the fort down while you're waiting for your rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Tannehill would definitely be fine, but at the end of the day, there are a lot of bridge quarterbacks out there that I think would be fine, and we're definitely going to talk about that because a bridge quarterback is definitely an option for this team this season.
Absolutely. Especially if you're going to end up taking a quarterback early that you want to, if not Richardson, it could be somebody else. And it's not necessarily the ideal to start these guys immediately. So getting a Tannehill on a 1-year deal where maybe Tannehill wants to prove himself. And if I ball out this year, I'll go get my Geno deal next year. Same thing with a guy like Locke. But there is going to be a couple of bridge guys that I think will fit that mark. And I do maintain my sneaking instinct on this is that with what you bring in for a guy to have to work with around him at that point, he's going to have a good opportunity to shine. It doesn't mean he's going to match what Geno put up, but I think you get a guy that can put up very close statistically to what you got from Geno overall. Again, understanding you're not going to require out of that quarterback what you required out of Geno. We had times this year where we were throwing 70% of the time. That's not going to be what you're going to look to do in the future. Not once you get a good center, not once you get another right guard, not once these tackles have another year of development. It shouldn't be that way going into the future as much.
The Snail, thank you for the $2. I want Deron Payne next year more than Geno. I think a lot of people would agree.
I probably find myself in the same camp on that. I've got a 26-year-old guy that's, you put him on the defensive line and again, frees me up in the draft to go whatever route I want to go to get the best player out of the draft, not be driven to like, well, I got to take Brian Breezy's at 5 now because we didn't get any defensive tackles in free agency. And then, well, now I need to get another defensive tackle in the second round because we don't know if Breezy's going to be really ready to go. This frees you up to do that, not just getting an impactful player, but in what it does to free you up to then just go through the draft and just let it ride through the draft. Just trust your board, as John said a couple of weeks ago.
I have a couple of little red flags around Deron Payne that I've developed as I've looked into him. Number one, he had a monster year after 4 years of being, a good player. So there's definitely got to be the stink of a contract year push all over that.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, for whatever reason, PFF doesn't like him, which I could dismiss, but it does raise my suspicions. I would still be happy to get him, but I'm still a little concerned.
I think the PFF thing is valid to look at. I think that when I looked at it and look, admittedly, I'm going to do a little bit more of a film viewing of him. I'm going to watch a couple of games before we do some of our preview stuff as far as looking at his games last year and just honing in on him specifically, especially the All-22 tape. But my sneaking suspicion is a little bit with Deron with Washington is when you have a defense that's on the field a lot with a bad offense, that maybe he's given up some yards and not necessarily him being directly responsible. Maybe at times he isn't, but then that means he's just on for a lot of snaps. He's going to get wore down, probably going to play too many snaps, and then it's going to then affect his grade down. So my comparison for this, Brendan, would be Uchenna Nwosu. To me, Uchenna Nwosu had a Pro Bowl year, but he got dinged down a little bit because he ended up having to play too many snaps at one point because you just couldn't trust what you were getting out of Darrell Taylor. Mafe was too young at that point. You had injuries to Alton Robinson. And so his year looks a little worse than it really was in its impact. If you look at what Uchenna brought to this defense, it's just that you can't ask. This is why I've leaned in recent years. We used some weeks. We talked about this with Jalen Carter. It's about the rotation that you need across the board on that defensive line, not just playing these guys 70, 80% of the snaps. So that would be my guess on it is Deron's probably playing too many snaps and that eventually wears down. And you're not going to necessarily ask him to do the same thing here after you pay him in the way that the Washington did. Washington, here's the other thing without remember too, is Washington knows they have a free agent, right? So they're not worried about emptying the tank out, to the last drop at that point. Cause they're like, well, we're probably not re-signing him. So let's just get what we can get this year. And that's, I don't know for sure. I'm speaking out of school with this and I need to do my tape study on that, but that was my wonder if maybe it was some of that on that, because even those years you talk about where he wasn't there as a pass rusher, he has been there as a run stuffer. The guy's legitimately one of the best run stuffing defensive tackles in the sport. He's giving you that bare minimum beyond whatever he gives you as a pass rusher. That's the floor you're getting when he walks in the door. And that's such a vital need right now for this defense.
Yeah. For whatever it's worth, PFF gave him a terrible run stuffing grade this year for whatever reason.
I gotta watch the tape.
Yeah.
The tape. That's why you can't just. It's the PFF can't be leaned on its own. You got to have the tape that you can match and pair with it, or
Yeah.
you are just speaking out of school with it. But I think you're right to mention it. It's this PFF's got to be there to be as a noteworthy tool to use. This is why
Yeah.
they use it, because it gives you a data point to go. Wait, now I need to go back and look at this and reevaluate this a little bit. Now I need to let's not just broad. Let's get to the real juicy heart of this.
Okay, so we've kind of explored the side of keeping Geno. Now let's explore the other possibility, which is, well, you could let him walk, but I have a feeling that if we're going to let him go, it's going to be through a tag and trade.
Agreed.
So the tag is, I think, for a quarterback this year, it's about 31 million, 32.
It was at 31.5, and then the final number was like 32.09 or something like that. It came out to.
Yeah, 32.1, you could kind of call it.
Right.
So obviously if he gets tagged and traded, the new team would come in and give him a deal right after the trade. They wouldn't force him to play on the tag.
Right.
When I talk about tagging Geno, I've gotten some comments that are basically saying, oh, we would never do that to Geno because then players wouldn't want to come here because the tag is so disrespectful. And I mean, I completely disagree with that philosophy, but do you have anything you want to say about it?
If somebody's going to say that in tagging, and they may be right, so I'm not saying that I'm not trying to throw these people under the bus, but if you're going to say that in tagging players now, that's going to lead you to not get players because they're going to think that's going to somehow get you to not get players, you have to provide examples to back that up. So who's the team that's used a franchise tag recently out there in the NFL circles that now nobody's going to go sign with because they use that tag? I don't think I can think of one real example out there. And even if we could find one, it'd be like the one in the wilderness of it not having any real true effect at the end of the day. And the Seahawks have a valid reason to utilize the tag here. Most of the time when the tag's been used in recent years where there's some friction, it's a team using the tag because they don't want to pay the rookie quarterback. And they're outside the 3-year stretch, but they're trying to stretch it out that final year or two to try to get that last little bit, right? It's to screw the player over. In this case, you've got 1 year of production off of a guy that's been a journeyman quarterback throughout the course of his year. You have absolutely a valid right to say, look, we just offered you, for instance, a 3-year, $30 million a year deal. We offered you a legitimate contract off that 1 year. You're wanting to be paid like kind of getting closer to top of the market on it. We're now valid to come back to this. I mean, he's turned down 30 and I can get you at 32 on a 1 year deal now with no future commitment. There becomes a point on that where it's from Seahawks standpoint, this is a better, more valid approach for us to take on this. And yeah, you would use it. You wouldn't just let him walk for nothing at that point.
Right. Yeah. I mean, my philosophy is the player uses every tool at his disposal to get as much as he can. So you should be able to use every tool at your disposal to give as little as you can. And that's the way this works. And the franchise tag is a tool.
Mm-hmm. And they haven't used it as much in the past, but that's not necessarily because they're just unwilling to. I don't think John wants to, but it's because they've been willing to reward their own guys that have the multiple years of production they're rewarding. It's not usually the guy that's just going to give him the 1 year that they're looking to then, give that, put that sort of situation on. So they pay their guys more often than not. But there does come a point on this where Geno drives the value up in a certain way where you go, this is beyond where we're comfortable doing it. We can just take the 1 year approach on this if we're not sure. And they've got a right to do it. They'll absolutely use it, I think, if they have to. And I think that they're not doing wrong by Geno to do that. He's deciding he wants to get the top of the market, and he'll still get paid at that point. Let's also remember that. They franchise him, he's still going to be getting his multi-year deal.
Yeah. And for the record, I think we tag him either way. We tag him if the plan is to extend him. We tag him if the plan is to trade him. I think either way he gets tagged.
Agreed. I just don't think you let an asset go for nothing at that point if you can get something for him. And at least I think a second round pick.
Right. So let's take a look around the league and figure out what teams are going to need quarterbacks this offseason. Mm-hmm. So I just pulled up the list of teams. We're going to go by division. And I think there are some instances where we also have to say, hey, the team might not need a starter, but this is a team that because of circumstances need a high quality backup. I think that's also noteworthy because that high quality backup might have been a low level starter on another team. Like the first team I'm going to talk about here would be Miami. Because of Tua's health issues, I think they have to get a high end backup.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Agreed. I think they're going to, they can look at that they're ready to compete. Their quarterback position can't hold them back, nor the injury thing with him. because no matter what they thought about, even if they're on board with Tua from a talent standpoint, they can't feel comfortable about him as far as the injury stuff goes going in the future. The kid's an injury waiting to happen. So they also have an offense in the West Coast offense that, though it's a different style than the one that Geno's playing in here, he has familiarity now within the West Coast offense too. So that could draw them a little bit closer to him as well.
And also in that division, I think the Jets are a very clear team that desperately needs a quarterback. So we got to put them here.
They do. I do. I will say Miami to me feels like the team that makes the run at Tua or makes the run at Lamar to me.
Miami or New York?
New York one feels to me like they're going to try for Aaron, and the Miami one to me feels like they try for Lamar. And that's, I'm not basing that on anything. That's just, to me, just fit wise, like Miami with having those two receivers there that Lamar, who is obviously challenged in throwing the ball, right? You having him just pepper the ball around the yard a little bit on little bubble screens and whatnot, working off of maybe some of his movement abilities. The only thing is maybe Mike McDaniel might not want that, the head coach down there with Miami, because he might be like, look, I got to change my whole offense to make that work at that point. But yeah, I either one I could see with both the two. I think Jets and Miami are going to be very aggressive teams to go out there and look at some. They're going to try to get somebody legitimate to their position. And having Tom Brady retire has certainly lowered this down as well, as far as the number of available people out there to go and get.
Exactly. Okay, so AFC North, the Bengals are good. The Browns are good, whether or not they want to be or not. They're stuck.
Yeah.
I think the Steelers are good. Maybe they need no, Trubisky's still under contract, so the Steelers are good.
They're good.
So you've got the Ravens, who are either going to need a quarterback or they're going to bring back Lamar. So the Ravens definitely.
The musical chairs there, where between three teams that we've talked about right out the gate here, it's Lamar goes, then that opens a chair to one place. Where does Lamar go? That'll close another chair. But yeah, I think that it's hard to see, isn't it? Lamar's the quarterback next year at this point. Doesn't it just kind of feel like it's hard to see him coming back? Yeah,
I can't see it. Yeah, in fact, we have this dono in the chat from Kevin Mullen. Thank you for the $1.99. Lamar goes to ATL. We trade Geno to Baltimore. I could see that happening very much. That makes some sense to me.
Absolutely could make some sense to me. I could see Baltimore making that kind of move. They flip us a late second round pick. They were 10-7. That'd be a late second round pick. You get back for them. I could see it.
Yeah, I think that makes all the sense in the world.
And why wouldn't Atlanta make that kind of move in a division that's as wide open as that is?
Didn't he play college football close to Atlanta? Isn't he from Georgia or something?
He went to Louisville. Wasn't Louisville in Kentucky? So he's in Kentucky. That's where he went to.
Close. Kind of close.
Kind of close. From the South. So you'd be near territory. He looked good in Falcon colors. So I could see it from a fit. And Falcons to me would be smart to do it because they don't have a path right now to their next quarterback necessarily. And I don't think Desmond Ridder is going to be it.
Okay, AFC South, we've got two really obvious ones. Houston needs a quarterback in the worst way.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Agreed.
And Indy, although it should be noted, they're going to at some point inject Matt Ryan into the free agent pool, I think, because I don't think anyone's going to trade for him. They save like $18 million, and he doesn't seem like he wants to retire. So I think he ends up either as a bad stopgap or a backup quarterback. Like a lot of people think he goes to Frisco. So that would kind of inject another quarterback into the game of musical chairs.
I think he is a backup though, which changes his status a little bit. But I do think Indy's your bottom line is right. I think Indy's in the market for a quarterback. I think Ryan going to the Niners makes a lot of sense. He's got the familiarity with Shanahan. He knows the system. But he's shot. He's done. And Shanahan will, Shanahan's like the only coach in the league that can kind of maybe coach around that a little bit. I don't know who else would be able to quite get around that limited skill set of Ryan. We were watching that game. Still just stands out to me from the past year. We're watching that game with him in Denver, and it was just, oh my goodness, that was painful to watch him throw a football.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know why he doesn't want to retire, but it doesn't seem like he does.
I don't understand either. If my skill set was that far diminished off what I once was, I'd be like, look, I just can't get it done anymore. But these guys will hold on, and especially the quarterbacks. Hell, backup makes 12, 13 million maybe. So, it's like worthwhile for them to be like, hey, it's another check, especially if I'm sitting on the sidelines just collecting the check for nothing.
Okay, Jacksonville's good, right? I mean, Lawrence had a good year, so they're fine.
They're fine.
And Tennessee's interesting. Tennessee could go a few different ways here, I think. What do you think?
They're going to be in the market for a quarterback.
Are they going to be in the market for a new starting quarterback, or do they just want insurance against Tannehill and they're going to move forward with Tannehill?
I think they let go of Tannehill. I think that they then look to find a veteran quarterback that they can fill in there. Much like with like Atlanta making that move for Lamar, they look at that division and they go, Jaguars 198, Lawrence is good, they're on the rise, but everybody else in this division, and there's holes here. You have Vrabel now feeling like he's getting to take over really that general manager spot. He's taken the control in that place. So he's the guy now gets to feel like I get to really instill my voice here in this. And so I think what that is going to be, I think in a lot of ways, Malik Willis's selection is the thing that pushed that general manager out there in Tennessee. And that even though it was in the third round, that it's just he was such a miserable player as far as what he showed them out there.
Yeah.
I think that they're going to try to go and be a little more aggressive. They feel like Tannehill kind of cost them a little bit in him being reduced or limited as he was at times in recent years. And so I see them, if not doing in the draft, then absolutely, I think they could be there and certainly could go for a guy like Geno. Hard to see them paying Geno like 35 though for being such a run-based offense.
Right.
That's the part where I can't see them necessarily with him. But
No,
Lamar,
the cliff has to be coming for Derrick Henry, right?
it's got to. He's had so many carries in this league, and I think he's already there's probably a titch knocked off of his top end here a little bit as it is right now with how many carries he's had. But yeah, I would think so. There's still going to always though be, I think, a team that's going to try to just run the ball, play defense. They have a defensive minded coach. That old cliche mentality, thinking of those defensive coaches and how they go about what they do. So it's got a lot of success. So he's won a lot of games taking that approach. But
yeah, I mean, a few years ago they gave Tannehill $30 million a year. Giving Geno $35 million a year is not really that different.
Yeah, I guess I could, but again, that was also the former general manager and Vrabel being in there as a guy that wants to be back in that mindset. And I'm making a little bit of a prediction here with him in his thinking. I think he would be more of a guy like, let's get the younger quarterback. To me, with them, if I was making a gamble, I'd say Tennessee tries to trade up in the draft. They're at like 11 or 12th, I think, in the first round. And to me, they're the one that tries to move up even to us at 5 and get that quarterback at that point. Anthony Richardson, for instance, if they could put him into Tennessee, they might overdraft him a little bit to make that happen because of the fact he could work with Henry and they could do a lot of that like manufacturing stuff offensively at that point.
Okay, so AFC West, you've got one obvious team, although they are going to be injecting another quarterback into the pool here with the Raiders.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, let's see here. Yeah, Las Vegas. I'm finally getting used to the Vegas thing.
Vegas. Yeah, they seem to be the top stack of the teams that are going to be willing to throw the first round capital at Green Bay to try to get Aaron, if Aaron is going to want to unretire, along with the fact Devontae Adams is there. So he's not going to, he's got his receiver familiarity there a little bit at that point. Hard to see him wanting, there's still a part of me that thinks that Aaron might just come back and retire. Like, I don't think it goes without saying that he's just going to come back for sure.
I actually think that's likely. I think he's going to retire.
Yeah, I can understand it. Like, he's going to go to Vegas and like, he looks at that and like, dude, I'm almost 40. I'm going to go into Vegas. I'm going to try to take this team with not really any good offensive line, or I'm going to go to Carolina that I don't have really the receivers there. And they're more run based as far as how they're built with defensively speaking, or no, you can't go to Carolina because Green Bay is saying he has to go to AFC. So then it has to either be the Raiders, the Jets, 7-10, or, maybe the Dolphins, I guess, would be maybe the one place that would jump out to him as far as a good landing spot. But it just kind of feels like maybe that one's going to be just he'll call it a day at the end of the day.
Yeah. Do you think the Broncos will be motivated to get a high-end backup because they had such a bad backup last year and it probably hurt them a little bit?
No, I kind of feel like Sean Payton's just going to kind of bide his time this year a little bit. I think they'll draft a guy, but I don't think that they're going to spend any money on the quarterback position at all in free agency. And he's just going to try to take his pain and lumps this year with Russ and potentially move on after that.
All right, so that's the AFC. Let me get these donos in. Connor, well, thank you for the $5 super chat. Have you heard of NFL Pro, NFL's new subscription service in beta that has next-gen stats, play-by-play film room with filters, etc.? Very useful. It does sound very useful.
It does. I've not seen it in the options with the NFL Plus thing, but if they institute it, I'll definitely be taking advantage of it. So
yeah. How much is the All 22 subscription?
It's like $10 a month or something.
Okay. I guess this will be more expensive if it has the same service for
sure,
plus
I'm
more.
Sure. Yeah, they're going to try to charge. I'm sure they're going to try to jack it up if they can. So, but if they can get it to play right, the problem with the All 22 right now, Brennan, is it's a night. When I try to put videos together for All 22, it's a nightmare. It is just the playback thing that they have on the NFL site is absolute garbage. It's just such garbage.
That's
Oh,
why I haven't gotten it yet.
that's understandable because it loads the plays individually, auto plays them. So one play finishes and then it auto plays the next, but then it has to buffer through the next auto play. And by the time it plays, it's halfway through the play. So you have to catch it, stop it, pull it back, get it to load, and then play it. It's
Hmm.
oh my god, it's just a pain.
Yeah. Teddy G, thank you for the 4.99. If Geno leaves, what will it take to trade up in the draft? Uh, I don't think trading up would be on the table regardless of Geno leaving or staying.
Yeah, Teddy, I just don't think there's been anything we've got a general manager who's been here 13 years, and you get through 13 years of drafting pretty good baseline for what that guy does and what he doesn't do, what he's comfortable doing, what he isn't comfortable doing. John Schneider has never in his history traded up in the first round. I'm not talking about trading up from I'm talking about not trading up from 28 to 19. Like he's
Yeah.
not even done that. Not even done that. So is he going to then make the biggest trade you can make in a draft, which is to trade back from a first round up to the top of the first round and giving up the maximum amount of assets to do so? No, I don't think that I don't think he will be. And here's the thing that this signals. If you let Geno walk, it's you signaling a bit of what I'm talking about, Teddy, in the respect of we're building for the team. This isn't about finding the star quarterback. This ain't finding Patrick Mahomes or Burrow right now. This is our team's going to get this job done. We need a point guard, a distributor, a guy that's going to be asked to do not as much as some of the other quarterbacks in this league, but he needs to do his job when he's asked to do it. And if you're doing that, then there's less of a need to go out there and get the prime A-cut beef, guy out that point. You can get by with a little bit lesser at that point.
Yeah. As for what it would take to trade up in the draft, a lot. Go ask the
Yeah.
Bears when they traded up one spot from 3 to 2. They gave up, I think, what was it, a third round pick and a fourth round pick?
Yeah. I mean, if we move up to, let's say we moved up to 2 with the Texans, that's going to be a first round pick, probably this year's first round pick, one of the second round picks this year, and maybe a future first round pick next year, or another second and third next year, something like that. It would
Yeah.
make everyone wince if they
Yeah.
made that kind of deal.
Yeah. All right. So let's look at the NFC now to figure out which teams are going to need a quarterback. Dallas, no. If you look at that Dak contract, they're stuck.
They're
There's
stuck.
nothing they can do. In
Yeah.
fact, have you heard they're talking about extending Dak to get that cap hit pushed out a little bit?
I'm sure Jerry's an idiot when it comes to spending money. So that's the one thing you can count on Jerry Jones is he's willing to spend money, but he's going to spend it stupidly.
Yeah.
That's what you can always count on.
Yeah. The Giants are definitely either going to need a quarterback or they're going to keep Daniel Jones.
Yeah, if you're hearing that they're already flirting with the 30 to 35, then they've made some peace with that, and that deal probably gets done. Daniel will sign that deal all day long when it gets said and done.
I will say this: he's got nothing at receiver, and he played okay, but I wouldn't give him no 30 million.
That's his one thing that he gets to lean back on. He gets the Justin Fields excuse a little bit of he's never had quality receivers to throw to. Kadarius Toney was a bust for them out of the second round. They signed the kid out of Detroit, Kenny Galladay, a couple years ago. It's been bad for them. But boy, to give him that kind of money, I mean, the Giants are going to regret that. I think if they gave him 30, 35, I think they regret that deal within a year.
I think there's a universe, and this sounds crazy, where Jalen Hurts wins Super Bowl MVP, and then he holds out for a contract, and the Eagles trade him. I think that's possible, but that's not really something that we can assume is going to happen right now. So not them.
I'd have a lot of respect for the Eagles if they did that. By the way,
I think it's probably the right thing to do.
I would have so much respect. I already have a lot of respect for Howie Roseman and how he's built that there, but that would just, like that up at a little bit of a cool level in my category of things. That's just understanding it, getting it, Brendan. You know what I mean? Just getting it. Like Hurts has been good. He's been a great player for us. But again, teams made this work. The 70 sacks we got this year made it work. The outside corners made it work. The offensive line that can run on anybody made it work. Like that's what makes this team work. Not necessarily Jalen Hurts as some, magical special thing. That's what that gets me, Brendan. It's like people will view the quarterbacks as like magical, like it's lore attached to them or something. It's like, no, it's you get the good players around them, the people can make it work. It ain't that, kooky.
Here's an easy one: the Commanders, or the Commodes, as I sometimes call them.
Sam Howell's QB1 in Washington, I guess.
Yeah, because they're definitely cutting Wentz. There's no way they don't cut Wentz.
Mm-hmm.
and Heineke's a free agent, so it's Sam Howell and nothing. So they're definitely going to need a quarterback.
100%.
Uh-huh.
100%. And they're
Maybe it'll be a bridge to hold off until Howell's ready, but probably not.
I don't think that they're sold on Howell. That's a 5th round pick. I think that they're just saying they are because they don't want to show their hand on this one. But they would absolutely make a deal for Geno if they couldn't give him the money. And I think Dan Schneider's maybe looking at the clock ticking on him being an owner there for only so much longer. If the NFL starts to press him a little bit, as I think that they're going to start to do it, even if it's just softly, that maybe pushes him to be a little bit desperate with this. I've wondered about them too being the team that might move up to us at 5. Like if you want to look at the far trade back at 17th or 17, that's the one where they move up to 5 and we just get the insane haul. Just dirty haul.
Once upon a time, Washington was that team that would make really, really dumb splash moves to try to get attention, and then it never panned out. It feels like they kind of moved off that lately.
Yeah, they haven't done it as much. They were a lot more wild with it when Schneider first walked in the door, Dan Schneider. So he's definitely, but again, my thing I'm wondering about with this is what is does Dan looking at the clock going, man, the NFL is going to have me forced out of here within 2 to 3 years. I want to get a win. I want to try to get to a Super Bowl here, and they're a team that's at 17 where they're picking. There's not going to be a quarterback that they're looking at, maybe McKee. If they want to go up there and go with McKee.
Wow.
Getting
McKee at 17, that would be a quintessential Washington move.
You see what I'm saying? That's I was running my mock drafts. It was there was times where I'm looking at it going, well, they're going to have to they go through this off season and they don't get Carr. They're not just rolling with Hal at that point. And then that's what to me could cause them to be driven to a desperate trade where they want to move to 5 to get maybe a Richardson at that point. Or we got the 3rd best quarterback on the board. We've got to leave Levis or I don't think Stroud lasts that long, but something like that.
Yeah.
Or Young.
Okay. NFC North, the Bears have already had a vote of confidence in Fields. Are they a team that might be in line for a quality backup though?
Not a veteran. They're not in the right shape to do that.
Lions are good, I think, right now.
Yeah.
They seem to really like Goff. Green Bay is either going to have Rodgers or Love starting this year, so they're good either way, I think.
Yes, Love.
Even if they don't like Love, they're going to give him a chance. And I think Love said, either start me this year or trade me. One of the two.
They're going to go with Love. They've put so much investment in that kid. It's Love all day.
Yeah. Cousins is locked in for one more year in Minnesota, so not them.
No, especially with their defensive troubles. They're not going to blame Cousins. They scored 424 points with the Cousins this year at quarterback. They're going to look at we got to get the defense.
NFC West, unless Stafford retires, I don't think any of these teams are going to need like a new high-end quarterback. I could see the 49ers picking up a high-quality veteran because they're in such a weird position right now with everybody getting hurt. And they're in such a weird spot this offseason. I have no idea what happens to their quarterbacks.
I think your Matt Ryan thing makes a lot of sense that you proposed, because then you can rock with Purdy and Lance. You bring in Ryan as your 3rd hedge in there, and you feel pretty good about that if you're San Fran, I think. And that's the one that's not going to cost you a lot to bring Ryan in, where some of the other ones like a car or whatever would cost you more than you. They don't have a lot of – they're in a tough cap situation space right now as the Niners. 25 free agents, and you have to add in Nick Bosa, who's going to want a $30 million a year deal. That's going to put them in a bit of a pickle, in a bind as far as what else they're going to be able to do on the market. They're a little bit stuck.
And of course, Seattle needs to be included here because right now both their quarterbacks are free agents. So actually, I should put them here. For the record, I'm not convinced Purdy can play football this year. I think there's a chance he misses the whole year. Mm-hmm. I know John Lynch is saying 6 months, but other doctors have actually said it's going to be a year. So.
Yeah, I just think they're going to do something. They're not going to just walk with these two into the season. No way.
Yeah. And I feel fairly comfortable saying that every team in the NFC South is on the table for a new quarterback.
Agreed. Mm-hmm. Yep. Any of those guys could jump into the forefront on that one.
Yeah. For the record, New Orleans and Tampa Bay have like negative 60 million in cap.
That was going to be the one thing I said. Yeah, it's going to be tough for those two to them to pull that move if they did that way. And Tampa's in a really weird spot, dude, because really they should probably just tear it down at this point. But they have a really good roster too. And it's, that's a tough one.
Yeah. All right. So I got 13 teams that need a new starter and 2 teams that need a high quality backup. So that's how many chairs we have. So let's see how many quarterbacks are going to be playing musical chairs. So what I propose is that I name a team and then you just take a guess at who you think is going to end up there. Any
Okay.
quarterback. It could be one of the rookies, could be a veteran. Brett Favre could come out of retirement because he's going to get sued from the welfare scam thing. It could be anybody.
He's suing McAfee and Shannon Sharp now. Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did hear that.
It's getting messy.
Yeah. So, all right. So
Hit me
that's
with
what
it.
yeah. All right. Real quick here. I want to go through these donos first before we start. Jeffrey, thank you for the $5. Don't think they make a public choice on Geno until late near draft, so they don't show their hand in the draft strategy. We won't know for months.
It's possible, especially if they're a part on the contract. It certainly could be a lot more of a feasible part of the process. So
yeah, and I don't think Geno would be upset about it. I think Geno would understand that, like, hey, you're going to get paid. We just need to figure out the way the dominoes fall first. So I think he'd be okay.
yeah, they're paying him $30 million. If they're offering that on the table, and that's been the road that they've come with a legitimate offer. They're not just trying to come and undercut him at the knees at 20 million or something. They've come to the table and given him something legitimate. So he can't say I'm not getting my, what do they say? I'm looking for my respect. It's not about the money. It's about the respect.
Right.
Okay.
I remember Sean Alexander saying that the offseason where Hasselbeck got paid, Walter Jones got paid, and then he got tagged. He was like, "What the heck?"
Yeah. I want my respect. Give me my respect. You just say you want your money. Like, don't give me the respect. It ain't about any respect. They could respect you all day. You'd still be like, that ain't feed me. That ain't, putting clothes on my kid's back.
John M429, thank you for the $9.99. Been watching you guys the past couple years and just want to say thank you for the work you put in. You keep the Seahawk year alive when there's no football. Appreciate you both.
Thank you, John. Very kind of you to say, man.
Yeah, thank you, John. Appreciate that as well. Okay, so let's start with the New York Jets. Who ends up quarterbacking the New York Jets?
The New York Jets become quarterbacked by Jimmy Garoppolo.
It kind of makes sense. He was there when Saleh was there, right? So that kind of makes sense. I can see it.
Let's go there. I got that one.
Yeah, did you see that PFF projected he was going to get a 4-year, $140 million deal?
The projection numbers, I don't know if you've seen some. These are all stupid contracts to me. I've seen a lot of these projection numbers, and they're all just like, what is this really based on? I feel like people are pulling numbers out of thin air more than they're really basing it on tangible, real world numbers of where this is going to truly be. So I don't see it there.
Okay, so let's go to the Houston Texans, owner of the number 2 pick in the draft.
Bryce Young.
Bryce Young? Yeah. You think he starts day one?
Yeah.
Okay. How about Indianapolis?
Will Levis.
They seem to like him, and it feels right. I've said this before. Right. It feels right.
Feels so right. Hand to glove on that one, Brendan. Slides right in.
Tennessee.
I thought about doing Lamar, but I don't think Baltimore trades him within the conference. The Tennessee Titans select Anthony Richardson.
Think they go with a rookie?
Florida. Yeah, they got Malik there too. So they let those two battle it out. And then I think they even have the Dobbs kid there too as a third.
Yeah, they literally signed a guy off the street to play over Malik Willis, though. I just get the sense they don't like him.
No, I don't. That's why I don't think it's a Vrabel pick. And I think he's going to, Malik stays there, might be very much numbered. He's only 3rd round pick too. So it could be. Yeah. I mean,
actually, real quick here before we move on, I just want to list some of the names that are available in free agency coming up. Just so everybody kind of knows who's on the table here. We've got, I'll just talk about the guys who are likely starters. Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, of course. We also have Lamar Jackson. We have, who's the other guy? Taylor Heineke, who I've already talked about a little bit at length here. Jimmy Garoppolo, who you already mentioned. Darnold and Mayfield are both free agents. They may end up starting somewhere, although Mayfield, Actually, I take that back. Mayfield's no way. No way he ends up starting week 1.
I don't think either him or Darnold have really a true starting opportunity, to be honest with you. They may be in competition, but they're not going to be earmarked as the starters.
Yeah. And then you've got Derek Carr and Aaron Rodgers, who are not available yet, but could be, along with Tannehill.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it, because Brady retired, and Bridgewater, I don't think is starting caliber at this point. I don't think anybody's going to look at him like that. And yeah, that's it. Unless you like Jacoby Brissett, I guess.
No. So I like what you're saying, and then that is that there's more chairs than there are QBs, then basically off of your list.
Right. So anyway, okay, Las Vegas.
Las Vegas gets Vegas ends up such a good question with Vegas, man. I want to give Rodgers there, but I just can't buy Rodgers going to Vegas, man. I feel like it's Dolphins, because Dolphins got the better offensive line, the better guys to throw to. He's leaving. He's not going to want to go and just get the hell beat out of him in the toughest division in football in AFC West, if we're not the toughest division.
Does Miami throw Tua into the Baltimore deal? Like, what happens to Tua if Lamar?
I think Lamar goes to Atlanta, and I think Rodgers goes to Miami, and then Tua goes to Vegas. There we go.
Ooh, that would be fun.
So Tua goes to Vegas. Vegas lose out on Tom Brady. They lose out on Aaron Rodgers. So they're not on their option 3, right? That ain't their first option coming in the offseason, but they end up landing on that because they just don't have any really good options. And they're definitely another team that could be Anthony Richardson too. So if it's not, if it could be Anthony Richardson at Vegas at 7, and then it could also be the Titans with Tua. That they could do that as well up there.
Yeah. Who'd you say to Miami?
Rodgers.
Oh, okay. Aaron Rodgers to Miami. I mean, that would be really fun with those receivers. Especially after the year Rodgers just had.
I mean, that's what I'm thinking is he looks at, they want to get him out of the NFC. He's got to go to an AFC team. I don't think Rodgers would go to the Raiders. I don't. Not with that line. That line's in. You got one guy. So then you just look through the rest of them and you go, Tennessee, Rodgers at Tennessee. Again, line's not in the greatest of shape. They got that kid they took out of Arkansas, the receiver, who's not very good last year. He was kind of busty too. Another reason why that general manager got fired. The best situation, the best place for Rodgers at that point is Miami. That's a pretty open division. Josh Allen's kind of been coming back down to earth, you know.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right. New York Giants.
Jones.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. The Commodes.
McKee.
Wow. Day 1 starter Tanner McKee. Wow. That'd be good luck selling out those home games.
They don't have any option here. I mean, hold on. Let me think about this. Let's change that. Change off McKee. Derek Carr.
Yeah, okay. That seems like a Washington kind of move.
Yeah, definitely.
Carolina.
Carolina, what do they do?
Are they the team that trades up for CJ Stroud?
Well, I think that they're eventually a team that's going to make the move for the quarterback, but I don't think we can predict that because I'm already got. Well, we can predict that Stroud's got to go somewhere, right? So, who's going to be the most aggressive? And why wouldn't they be the aggressive? The division's there for their taking. Yeah. They need a quarterback. Get this. Yes, let's Stroud to Carolina. Good thought. Beautiful.
Yeah, I kind of like that. Okay, New Orleans and their negative $60 million in cap space. By the way, it could be Jameis Winston. He is still under contract.
And no first round pick.
Yeah.
And they still have Taysom Hill under contract, right?
Yeah, but I think it's really easy to get out of it. It's one of those BS contracts. Andy Dalton's a free agent, by the way, so they can't just bring him back for free. They'd have to.
We're running out of chairs, man. We're running out of chairs.
Exactly.
Sam Darnold competes with Jameis Winston.
Ooh, I like it. Okay, Tampa Bay. Currently 1 QB under contract. It's Kyle Trask.
I think Tampa Bay, because like you talked about the cap situation, they know what the reality is. They're going to just kind of have to just take this year in the shorts a little bit. Tanner McKee goes to Tampa Bay. They get a quarterback very similar to Tom from a standpoint of not a lot of mobility, but the offense is already kind of built in to deal with some of this stuff. Bruce Arians is still on the consultant role. He's going to like McKee's big arm, no risk it, no biscuit arm. He's going to like that arm. Let's go McKee, Tampa Bay.
Baltimore, who we already projected to lose Lamar.
Oh my God. Hard to see them losing Lamar and then not doing something, isn't it?
Yeah. This might be the most logical Geno destination.
The thing with Geno is, even though I'm pissing and moaning about the 32 million, the fact that Geno comes out and says that he thinks the deal is going to get done to me was no small thing. Players don't do that. They're instructed by their agents to shut their traps and not show that kind of hand in that way. And so that Geno says that, like you said, they offered 30, they want 32. Like, is that going to really not get a deal done at that day? Like, I'm going on this when I'm putting them in Seattle at this point, based on kind of what we're seeing where this is going.
Right. And Baltimore ends up with options include Baker Mayfield, Teddy Bridgewater, Case Keenum, Jacoby Brissett, Joe Flacco, Andy Dalton, Mike White, Taylor Heineke, like Drew Lock is still out there, I guess. We haven't talked about him yet. Cooper Rush, Tyler Huntley, who did not play well at all this year. Gardner Minshew. Like it's I think
who's their offensive coordinator? Is it still Roman, or
they fired Roman? So that's why they're interviewing.
They're looking to change. That's right. They are interviewing. They were interviewing though Canellas. I've got a name on this that I'm thinking about. A tandem of names for you. I just want to think about it really quickly if this is the right path. Okay. They will do a combination this year of Tyler Heineke and Hendon Hooker.
Mm.
So they'll take Hendon Hooker in the second round.
Okay. All right. So basically, the point I'm trying to make here is you look at this list. You've got Aaron Rodgers to Miami, who is, I think, 50-50 to retire right now. And if he takes himself off the market, then who's replacing him? Is Miami going to just stick with Tua, or do they go get like Jacoby Brissett? Like it's not good if Rodgers is not there.
I mean, they're stuck with Tua at that point, aren't they? You just broke it down very well. There's no pathway for them, the quarterback they want to get the significant upgrade over Tua, or be just an upgrade over Tua. Who else is it? They look at Carr and think that's an upgrade. I mean, maybe they do that, but that seems like to me more of like one of those moves that makes you like 5% better, but you have to end up giving Carr a new deal, and
Yeah, and then we've got the Jets getting Garoppolo, a guy who got outplayed by Mr. Irrelevant. You've got Baltimore taking Taylor Heineke, who I kind of like, but he's no, prize pig.
And that's the one I don't like, by the way. I like all these except my pick of that one. Like, that's the one with their situation I don't like, because for them to go off Lamar and end up with like a Heineke-like quarterback you're rolling with, and then there's not a guy in the draft that they get on top of that to, for a team that drafted Lamar when they still had Flacco under contract.
Yeah. And then we've got on this list, we've got 4 rookies starting, including 20-year-old CJ Stroud. We have 5 rookie quarterbacks starting, including Anthony Richardson, who is 20, CJ Stroud, who is 20, Tanner McKee, who I just don't think he's that good. You've got Tua starting, who, okay, that's understandable. Derek Carr. You've got Sam Darnold is one of the starters. The point I'm trying to make,
competing with Jameis.
Yeah, competing with Jameis. The point I'm trying to make here is that there's going to be a hunger to trade for Geno Smith, because look at the dregs that some of these teams had to settle for when we played this game.
100%. There will absolutely be a market, and that's why you use the franchise, and that's why when I say second round, to me, that's the minimum, Brendan. I wouldn't be surprised if they came out with a late first or a second and a third round pick for moving Geno at that point. I think that's the value of it, and you're right. Driven by the market scarcity.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to remind people as well. Carson Wentz was the worst quarterback of the season in 2020. You look at his numbers in every imaginable way, he was the worst quarterback in the league who started. And he got traded for, I believe it was a second rounder and a third rounder.
That's right.
Like, I did the math on this. If you added the value of those 2 picks up, it was approximately equal to the 30th pick in the first round. So a late first rounder.
They were mid-tier picks. They weren't like at the back end. Those were mid tiers, because Indy was not a good team. So that's.
Yeah, and Matt Ryan, a year after he was just kind of went for a third rounder.
Mhm.
So to me, Geno's trade value is somewhere between those two things. Somewhere more than Matt Ryan, somewhere probably a little bit less than Carson Wentz, just because Wentz was younger. Wentz had that MVP caliber year a few years prior. He had the draft pedigree. He was the number 2 overall pick.
Mhm.
So to me, I look at Geno and I say early second, maybe a late second plus a third, somewhere in that area.
Yeah, I think second, third round pick, maybe not the top of those rounds, but second, third round pick to me, I think is very reasonable. And again, we talked about earlier about that price going up as high as it does. Those are picks I get those two back in addition to all the picks I have in this draft. That's cooking with oil at that point. You really have a lot you're able to add on your team. So to me, that would be the better pathway to go potentially if it's going to cost that amount, but I don't think it's going to go that way. It's a little bit
Right.
different from what I think to what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, and the reason why it can happen like this is you're going to have multiple teams bidding for him. If you slap the tag on him, you're probably going to get Washington taking a run at him. You're
Mm-hmm.
probably going to get Tennessee to take a run at him. Baltimore could take a run. The Jets could take a run, as weird as that would be. I think it's on the table.
100%.
Carolina could take a run.
Mm-hmm.
So there are going to be bidders. It is a seller's market.
It is. And they're not just bidding on him again, just to bid on him because he's such a good player. They're bidding because these are teams that are desperate to turn themselves into contenders. Washington wants to contend in that NFC East that has been owned by the Cowboys and the Eagles as of recently. They've been sitting kind of at the bottom of the barrel for a while. They want to jump forward here. So there's 4 or 5 of those teams that, not only do they need the quarterback, not only do they want the quarterback, but they have this sense of urgency of got to get the deal done this offseason because we've just been waiting for so long and there's no other pathway and we got to do it. And that's what gets you those returns potentially where this could get into kind of funny money territory. If you get a couple of teams, right? You get 3 teams that are aggressively going at it. Now we're maybe talking about a first round being thrown in there if it gets hard enough. Maybe not likely, but possible.
Yeah, maybe it's something where it's like Geno plus your third round pick, and then that becomes like a late first rounder, or Geno plus a second round pick becomes a middle first rounder. I think that's possible.
Yeah, 100%. Or you could do a players. This could be a player included where it's a second round pick and it's Washington throws us, maybe not Deron Payne, but something like, you're doing, here's a pick and this guy, here's this and this guy. That's somebody that can help you on your team too. Then in addition, so you could be very creative with this on a couple of different approaches, but the bottom line is you're going to get a lot of value for then at that point, that 1 year play from Geno.
Right. Yeah, there's a shortage of good quarterbacks in the league right now. So this is a great way to capitalize. Either be one of the teams with a good quarterback or trade one of the good quarterbacks for more than he's worth.
That's 100% right. You want to be on that other end of it then.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is we all need to cross our fingers that Aaron Rodgers comes out of that cabin in the middle of the Sahara Desert or whatever and decides he's had enough.
That's right. Tom's helped us out with the situation and him being that guy. So is Rodgers here. And that's just going to help our market that much better. As long as we're, of course, Brendan, willing to actually move him. And we haven't just made our peace with the fact, well, we got to bring it back. I mean, we're going to play hardball a little bit here with negotiations, but eventually we'll give ground, we'll do. So you got to be willing to make the move if it's coming up. But I do think there'll be some tasty offers put on the table for the Hawks to think over.
Right. Yeah. The thing is, the other side of that, because there's a shortage of good quarterbacks in this league right now, that is part of what is driving up his asking price. So there is definitely a downside to what we're talking about here. The departure of Brady from the league and potentially Rodgers from the league has that effect as well. So you have to be aware of all the angles.
You do. And that's where I think you get instructed by your current situation where you know where you are. To me, we are in my 4 gamut of spots. We're on the ascent gamut. We're not on the elite gamut. We're on the ascent gamut. So if you're on the ascent gamut, you're not to me held or you're not driven as much by some of these teams that feel like they're just this close. They're a quarterback away from being in that elite stage, which, I don't think either of you, I think if Washington gets an elite, that you're not an elite quarterback way. You have more, but they think they are. That's the key with it. And you as a team right now aren't maybe necessarily in that place. So it's okay thinking, okay, we're not going to get our quarterback this year. We'll have maybe a Drew Lock this year because he went in our list there. He went unsigned as well, right? That whole breakdown we did, you still had Lock available on that stage of things. So you just wait that extra year until you are more than driven. And then once you find yourself driven in that stage, maybe you make the same kind of aggressive move that a team made this particular year for a guy like Geno. If you have a team more better and well positioned at that point to be ready to hit that elite stage, ready to get to that point of being talked about as a Super Bowl contending team. I don't mind you making a move then, but it's when you talk yourself into it is when I think it's a stupid move like Washington would, or driven out of desperation.
Right. And I think we've kind of dug into this Geno Smith thing as much as we can. We explored both angles. We talked about the market that there might be for him, talked about the contract details. Quick question, though. I forgot to bring this up earlier. How would you feel would you feel differently if it was like a 2-year deal? Does that change anything for you?
I wouldn't like the 2-year deal.
You want to do 3?
Yeah, because again, the main issue I have, and maybe I'm walking too many steps a little bit ahead of myself on this, Brendan, where it's really, I should just be getting caught up on the first thing. But to me, when you do the 2-year deal, then now I'm paying full market price. There's no money to massage in any place. Now it's hitting the cap. How am I going to be aggressive around that with the cap now to take advantage of that contract at that point? Because it's a 2-3-year deal, no matter what it is here, Brendan, we both agree. This is a go forward type move right now. To re-sign Geno right now is to say that we can be a Super Bowl contending team in the next 2 years. Otherwise, what's the point of signing him here? Unless it's like what you said earlier, which is that they just are wanting to get the team just good enough to sell out the fans and keep people just placated enough to where they're not going to be pissed off and riot, basically, essentially.
Okay.
So
3 years is the magic number for you.
3 years is the magic number for me. I'd even be willing to do the 4-year deal because I think that you can get out from under it and you can massage the numbers out even more that further at that point.
I mean, the magic of the Mahomes contract is that it's 10 years. So yeah, it gets huge, but by the time it gets huge, the cap is going to be so big, it's not even that big of a deal.
And he's restructured already twice. That's the other thing with it. It's like he's twice lowered it down his cap hit each 2 years. So it's just like dude, I'm so jealous of what they've got there with that. And as far as they got this guy that's the best talent at the position, and he's already taking discounts 4 or 5 years into his career.
Right. I mean, that's making the future cap hits bigger. I mean, it's like when he restructures, it's not like he's taking a pay cut. It's just pushing the pain out.
He's doing your thing of what you talked about, though, where he's pushing the pain out to a place that's going to be so far out when it gets pushed to that they don't really have to feel it. It's like your whole, put the voidable 5 years on the end of the deal thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's the cap will have risen, that Amazon money is going to kick in at some point substantially, and it's not going to be any big deal, So you're right. There's a little bit of pain there with it, but if he just keeps kicking the can down the road, they can prolong this as long as they absolutely want to.
Right. But yeah, going to a 4th year with Geno would have a little bit of that effect where the big cap hits hit when the cap is like 400 million or whatever it's going to get to.
Right. Exactly. Or you can sustain the dead money at that point by the 4th year. And it's like, the cap's at $275 million. And okay, we're eating $15 million, but that's like equivalent to today's of like eating $6-7 million off the cap, which you're willing to do at that point, especially if it was for a go for it move to win for a couple of years.
Yeah, that was a great conversation about Geno Smith, man. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I loved it, man. I always love talking about this stuff, and it's good to get into the depths of this. This is going to be where everything's driven off of, right? Everything from this pivots whichever way they're going to go. So this is absolutely the cornerstone move of this offseason, essentially, and it can go one or two other ways off of it, or a variety of ways off of it, not just 1 or 2 ways.
Yeah. So next week, we're going to be going over to your channel. We're going to be talking about all our other outgoing free agents.
Sounds good.
Can't forget about them. Just because Geno is probably going to get more than all of them combined, you gotta keep those guys in mind too.
We got some interesting guys that we might want to be bringing back. Marquise Goodwins and Rashad Pennies, and so there's going to be a couple guys to be taking a really good, hard, long look at here as far as this goes.
Right. And I want to thank you, Brandon, for coming out to the show tonight. I want to thank all the 300 plus people we had in here throughout the night.
Let's go.
Yeah, I myself will be jumping on Twitch in the near future. Going to do some Hogwarts Legacy tonight.
Oh, good. You're not getting bullied too hard for playing that game.
No, I'm not. It's
good.
And
I
wouldn't let them bully me.
I wouldn't either. Like, I won't play a video game. I won't play a video game. Don't tell me what video game I don't get to play. Like, you know what I mean? Come on. We're not reaching that place. Like, come on. Oh, Lord.
Yeah, but it's pretty good, by the way. Did you ever play the old BioWare games?
I never got much into it because I've always been so driven to just the multiplayer stuff. But this one's actually got me interested because there is such a dearth of options out there video game wise. Like I've been
Yeah.
doing COD, and I'm just like, Warzone's just so boring, but there's nothing good out there. And so you're just like, all right, let's just fire this up. I can do it for a while, and it's empty headed, whatever, but
Right.
we need a new video game right now, Brendan. We desperately need a good multiplayer game out there. It doesn't even have to be a shooter. Just give me, and this
Mhm.
isn't this kind of open world too? Like you can do.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of like modern open world where, yeah, it's open world, but ultimately the game is going to force you to do things a certain way at points. Which did you play a Red Dead Redemption?
A little bit, yeah. It's
Yeah,
kind of like Destiny 2, where
yeah,
you see this whole huge open world out here, but you're always kind of
yeah.
you're here on this path. So look out there. Can we go out there? No. How about out there? Look at that mountain. Is that? Yeah, it is. Can we see it? No. No.
Yeah. So link to my Twitch is in the description. So if you want to watch that tonight, head on over. We will be doing this again next week. And we are, God, what is it now? 2.5 days. Call it, well, 3 days away from the Super Bowl. You got a quick pick for us, by the way?
Kansas City.
Oh, really? Okay. I'm going Philly. So we'll see how it goes. I just can't pick against that defensive line, man.
I think the Eagles are going to have to play against Kansas City and the officials, and I always bet on the officials.
Okay. That's a really good point. And then it's on to the off season for everybody, and it's going to be exciting. We're going to be here every week to break it down together. We're going to talk about it every step of the way. Next week, we're going to talk about our outgoing free agents over on Brandon's channel. Hope to see you guys there. Hope to see you guys on my videos and all the videos that the Hawks Nest does over the next week. Between then, I've got a lot of plans for videos. I know Brandon. I think he streams like are you doing twice a week right now, or
About
have you
twice,
not?
yeah. I try to do twice a week
Yeah.
right now is where I'm shooting for if I
Mhm.
can. I'd like to do a
Yeah.
little more, but always run out of time.
Right. And hope you guys are ready to enjoy all of it. And we got to
Let them know,
say it.
man.
Yeah,
Gotta let them know,
absolutely
man.
got to say it one more time because I mean, you gotta remind them sometimes
It's
because
off
it's the off
season.
season. People
Yeah,
forget.
they do.
People
It's just
forget.
it's human nature, Brendan. You got to stay in their ear. That's going to slip right out of their brain. So let them know, man.
Oh, Hawks.
Go Hawks.